Psych. All right, everyone. This is Luke Hector and Dan from Chairman of the Board doing a top 10 list for you today. A bit of a different time than usual because one advantage of having this particular guest on is that we're in the same time zone, which means we can actually do these things when we have the chance to do this, as opposed to me sort of going, right, late at night before most people are in bed, decide, right, we're going to do a top 10 list. So it's the afternoon for you and then twilight for me, essentially. It's a little bit insane. Now, just going to sort out a little bit of your mic volume because your microphone sort of picks up your breathing a little bit there. But
has it? Oh, apologies.
that's all right. But yeah, that's quite cool. So basically, just don't breathe. Now you'll be right. But yep. So we got here Nick. Good morning to you. Side game. Good morning. Yeah, morning for you. It's afternoon for us. John Wheeler. Lillian, always good. Emily C. Michael. Blimey, we got all sorts here. We're going to get quite a few, and I suspect we'll see a few of the regulars like Hexy Beast and stuff like that for you. Only for this, I do get your. Let me know in the comments. Are you hearing Dan's breathing? I know that sounds like a weird question, but it's only because I'm hearing it on my side. If you're not hearing it on yours, then good. I don't need to worry. Otherwise, it might just be a case of a push to talk or something. But it is kind of a slightly weird how that's working, but oh well, like I say, you can't get perfection. So yeah, top 10 games that aged well. Before we go on there, like, people are saying they can't hear it, so it might just be coming through my feed, which is excellent if that's the case. So cool. Thank you, everybody. Yeah, Darth Vader style. So it's a bit like that, yep. So it was kind of like, I'm waiting for Dan to pull out a lightsaber and all that. But before we get onto the list and what on earth we're talking about, I just want to let Dan basically do the selfish plug of the episode, which is what this bit basically is. But rather than me explain what Dan does, why don't you do so?
Yeah, thank you, Luke, and thanks for having me on today. So yeah, my name's Dan. I have my own YouTube channel called Chairman of the Board, where I talk about board games, of course, all different things. So I think maybe the thing that differentiates myself from a lot of other YouTubers is that I do put just as much spotlight on older games and try to find those old hidden gems more often than not to try and, again, put that spotlight on. I kind of have a no-frills approach, so I'm a bit of a technophobe. It's just me, a camera, microphone, and just talking about what I'm passionate about. So yeah, very simple approach, no frills, but I enjoy it. And I think, my subscribers tend to enjoy the content I put out. So I'd obviously love to have more of you over. So yeah, check it out if you're not aware of me. And I tend to kind of tailor towards more Euro gamers. I'm a massive advocate for the dry, dusty beige Euro. That's my thing. That's my niche, I suppose. But yeah, if that's your cup of tea as well, then again, I'd love to have you over on the channel.
There's definitely a few on there when you're talking about beige Euros. Although, gotta say, love the Shelf of Shame thumbnail you use with the Game of Thrones like Bell Street thing. I think that's a good picture to use. But now it's definitely a bit of a variety channel. So we got some reviews, we got top tens. I haven't seen that one. I have to check that one out. Actually, racing games, because I do like that genre and it's not represented. Just explain a bit what your corporate cardboard is.
That's okay, so myself and Mackenzie Franklin from Side Game LLC, who I know you've had on the channel before, we do a kind of almost bi-weekly, pretty much variety show where we talk about what we've been playing, and we talk about specific components and mechanisms we like in games. We touch a little bit on crowdfunding, lots of different little random little games and things like little activities where we do like a randomizer on the Board Game Geek feature, and we talk about what comes up. So it could be anything, but yeah, we really enjoy it, and we've actually got one coming later today. So if you want to check that one out, then please feel free to do so. But yeah, it's kind of like a podcast, but on YouTube. I suppose that's the best way to put it.
So how did you and Matt get talking then?
So he actually just contacted me out of the blue for a top 10 video over on his channel talking about actual boards from board games, so our favorite game boards. So we did a top 10 on that, and then I think we had a bit of chemistry. We really enjoyed each other's company and thought, you know what, we enjoyed that, let's make it a regular thing, and we've done that ever since. So it's been really enjoyable, and we're not thinking of ending it anytime soon. So yeah, it's all good fun.
How is that? I know it. I know it is technically Franklin, but I don't know. I call him Mac for some reason. It's it's. I always tend to shorten people's names and that, so I usually find like the easiest way to shorten. And it's like for some reason I just keep calling him Mac. But you know, he's welcome to tell me. He's welcome to tell me if he hates it. All right. So that's the deal. The Watch Mojo of board games, as I've called him, with his top 10 list. But
Yeah,
nah, that's cool because
exactly.
I did sort of wonder like, okay, he's over there, you're here. How did this sort of happen? You know, this kind of pairing. But it's like, all right, fair enough. You know, you know, I'm totally game with that. And of course, 11, 12 episodes. So, and it, you know, it's good to actually get some different kind of YouTube style podcasts in a sense. Because do you do an
Yeah,
audio RSS feed for this as well, or is it just the video?
we only do video at the moment. We're going to start thinking about how to convert that into podcast format because I don't have a clue what I'm doing. I'll be honest. So I'll look into that and try to get that sorted because I think it lends itself to either platform perfectly well.
Mm. Yeah, know the feeling. People ask me if I can do playthroughs. I can't. I don't have two cameras, nor do I have the space unless somebody can install one on my ceiling. But I need to pay somebody a big check to do that because I am not touching the ceiling with any kind of power tool myself. So it's not happening. But yeah, I just noticed actually that StreamYard has updated since the last time I used this because normally the screen had to be like this around the side. But there's a new one here where we come down like that and it's a bit more
Yeah.
central. So I'm curious. Let me know in the comments, people. Which one do you prefer? This one with it more central or this one with us on the side? I'd be curious to know actually because then I can just start using that. But no, this pairing has been requested by quite a few people, and certainly there was a bit of buzz once he said, although Dan's the one who approached me on this occasion after sort of wanting to get on the channel. But again, you know, I spoke to Franklin on the last you know, top 10 that we did, and he says, oh, like, oh, who are you thinking of next? It's like, all right, what about Dan? It's like, go get him. So there's clearly a lot of like plugging on both sides there. But on to the list, top 10 games that aged well. We did consider top 10 versatile games. My concern with that was that it seemed quite broad as to what versatile would mean, but maybe we'll revisit that at some point. What have we got in here? So on the side, otherwise it covers the screen view. Okay, yeah, noted. All right, we'll stick with the old version then. But in this case, what makes a game age well, that's definitely going to be a subjective point for the both of us. However, the one caveat we do have in common is that we've gone a minimum of 10 years back. You know, we want to give these games a little bit of time to age. And so 10 years just seemed like a blanket figure to use. And I got to admit, I'm kind of glad because had we gone back further, this might have been a very tricky list to do. Trying to find a lot of games that are old that I like. It's like, ugh, okay, not good. Although, man, the going back to 2011 in particular, it suddenly dawned on me just how many games I've got in my collection that I kind of like from that year. I'm not saying they're on my list, you know, because they don't necessarily age well. But it's like, wow, if you went to 2010, I'd lose out quite a few games. That must have been like the
Yeah.
turning point, 2011, where games started getting like, you know, really good for me personally. Other caveats for me, though, it's not really much of a caveat. I've tried to say that if a game's going to age well, it needs to be something I would want to play fine in its original form. So, you know, expansions and re-implementations should invalidate the game. A good example would be Mission Red Planet. Came out about mid 2000s, I think. Great game, but I wouldn't play the original version. I play the Fantasy Flight updated version, and that's not. Oh, so it's like you can't really say the game has aged well if I'm playing an updated version, and there's a couple of other games that have fallen short for that. What about you?
Yeah, completely agree with what you said. I know we put the blanket figure of 10 years on, and when we got to that 10 years, I thought, well, this is still really broad for me because a lot of the games I like are from that era anyway. I probably could have done a really strong list even going 15 plus years ago, to be honest. But 10 years did add a few more games onto the list that wouldn't have made it otherwise. I mean, I tried to think, number one, what you said first was spot on. If this game has been changed any time, then I guess that's an update, isn't it? So it's changed the whole concept of what we're talking about. One of the things I tried to think about was if this game was released today, would this still hold up, and would it still, would it still be a hit today if it was released? And I confidently think all mine would. Also, are these games still at the top of their genre? Are they still holding a high standard of all the different categories of games? Are these still ones that are, again, the kind of gold standard? And are they going to hold hold up for some more time? So are we still going to be talking about these games in 10 years' time? So, and I try to exclude some more obvious choices, like, we're not going to talk about, well, I'm not personally going to talk about chess or anything like that, where it's going back hundreds and hundreds of years.
Nah, I mean, chess is awesome, and I still play. I would still play it if someone offered it. But it's not like I'm going to my game club saying, "Who fancies a game of chess?" It's definitely not. Has it aged well? Hard to tell, really. I mean, yes, some people still play it, but who does play chess other than the grandmaster experts? Really, I've never been to a game club and seen a game of chess played, so it doesn't quite, and that's why like things like Go or Texas Hold'em Poker wouldn't necessarily be on the list. It's like, yes, I like Texas Hold'em Poker, but I don't go to game night to play poker, and they're all a product of their time, even though they're still good games. So it's like I say, it's going to be a subjective list, but hopefully, hopefully it all works out. That's the main thing. So without further ado, as always, let's get a move on. Guess first, as you know.
Okay, so at my number 10 is a bit of a cheat, really, and the only cheat I've got on my title list. So this is actually almost a category of games. But if I want a specific one, I will give a specific one. So I'm talking about
let you off this once.
Pardon? I'm talking
you
about
get one
the
cheat.
One cheat. Okay, one cheat. Yeah, one cheat. I'm happy with that. So mine is the Reiner Knizia auction games. So I'm talking Modern Art, which goes back all the way to 1992, High Society going back to 1995, and Ra going back to 1999. I know there are more of them, but those are the ones I've played. But these are the reason I've listed at number 10 is because these are relatively light games. So I don't know about you, Luke, but I thought I would give grace to more of a more involved, heavier game than I would to a lighter, more filler style game, because I think it's easier for a designer to make a simpler game to last longer, if that makes sense. I don't know if that does make sense, but
it kind of does. But then that doesn't necessarily make it like a smaller game should age better than a heavy one.
No, I agree with that. Yeah. I agree with that, but I think maybe if it is a bit lighter, then it and there's not much more kind of complexity and stuff to it, then it's more likely to be more kind of a purer version of things, and those tend to stand the test of time a bit better.
Yeah, but anyway, thinking about my list, that does actually make a bit of sense, because I don't think there's any particularly heavy games on mine. I think they've got to appeal to a wide audience to stand the test of time.
Yeah, very fair point. Yeah. Anyway, so Modern Art is a really simple auction game when you think about it, but I like the variety of this one. So this offers all the different types of auctions. You've got the blind bidding auctions, you've got the kind of once around auctions, you've got your standard, chip in when you want style auctions. And the same kind of goes for High Society, but you're using cards in order to kind of preset deck of cards in order to bid for points, basically. So you're basically just buying points or trying to buy not to take negative things. And Ra has more of a kind of a smaller hand once around auction style thing, where you're trying to collect tiles and trying not to run out of time to collect those tiles before the time runs out. So it's got a pushy luck mechanism to it as well. But the thing that I love about all these games, which I think have held up more than anything, is the twists and the scoring mechanisms which make them really different. So, for example, Modern Art, very simple auction game where you're just bidding for different types of art to get points. But in this one, you are actually collecting these cards, and each round only the 3 most popular artists, because I think there's 5 or 6 different types of artists, only the 3 of them are ever going to score. And the most popular artist, i.e. the one with the most cards that are being distributed amongst the players, are going to be worth, like, I think it's 30 points each. The second place is going to be worth 20 points each, and the third place is going to be worth 10 points each. But that compounds as the round goes on. So if you've got the popular artist twice in a row, then that could be worth 60 points a painting you have. But I love the fact in the subsequent round, if you collect another one of those paintings and they didn't make the top 3, because you might be going gung-ho on them trying to get all those paintings because they're worth a fortune, then all of a sudden they don't make that top 3 criteria to be the most popular artists. Those paintings are worth nothing, and you could have wasted all your money and just paid another player a bunch of cash just to get no kind of dividends out of that. And High Society has that cool twist where if you spent the most money at the end of the game, you automatically lose. And Ra, again, has that pushy luck aspect to it where you need to get your bids in before the time runs out. So very simple games where the actual gameplay is just auctions, but those little caveats and little twists to make them interesting really do make it pop for me, and I love what they do, and I think they hold up very well. I still enjoy these and would play these anytime, and particularly when it comes in under an hour to play all of them. So yeah, love these games.
Yeah, not the biggest fan of the games, but they do hold up sort of more. I mean, I'm not a fan of modern art at all. But you mentioned High Society. I can give that one a bit more props. I mean, I don't love it to bits, but a friend of mine does have that. I've been tempted to grab it just because it's cheap and it's like, okay, fine. But then I got Biblios, which I prefer as a sort of biddy auction game as a filler. But yeah, I mean, High Society kind of holds up as well. It's nice and easy. It's mainly just because I'm not a big fan of the auction mechanic. That's pretty much the
Okay.
main reason. Is like there's only quick bidding has to be the thing. Long drawn out auctions, sometimes like throw me off. But High Society is one that I can just kind of go, you want to play that? Yeah, 20 minutes of my time. Yeah, that's fine. I think Biblios does a little bit more for me, but I say they hold up. What was the third one you mentioned?
Ra, so the Egyptian themed one with the tiles. So just RA, yeah.
That one, not so much. I see people playing High Society. The rare time I see people playing Modern Art, I've not seen a single person play Ra. I'm
Okay.
not convinced.
I know it's
not
out of
sure
print
about
at the
that
moment,
one.
but I think
Well, they
it's
brought it back
remained
into
in
print
print.
and then it went out again.
Yeah, but it's one of those games that kind of always generally been in print since it came out in the late 90s. So I think it will
Right.
be back. I think it will be back because I think it's a lot of fun. A bit more random
Yeah.
than the other ones maybe, but I still enjoy it.
Yeah, I think it's one of those ones there. Okay, so my number 10, they have technically brought out a second edition of this, but it doesn't really matter because all it basically did was add an expansion with more buildings in it. But 2004, this was a card game reimplementation of Puerto Rico called San Juan. This is still a game I play today. I mean, it is slightly better in its second edition because of more variety, but the game is a straightforward card game. You're building buildings with the cards. The card deck is everything. So it is your currency, it is the buildings, it is the special effects. And the idea of the round is just simply a bit like Puerto Rico. Choose a role, do the roll, everybody gets to do the turn, you get a bonus. So the gameplay is crazy simple, but this one still holds up for me today. I still want to bring this out and play it because I can teach it in about 5 minutes because it's that simple. And this mechanic, was famous in Puerto Rico. I think it's been used in one or two other games, and curious to see if Puerto Rico makes anyone's list. But just the idea of like having a deck of cards, being able to do, everything. It's something that hasn't been done as much now. You get a couple of games where it's like, they might still have a few tokens or a few of those on the side, but no, it's like, here's your deck of cards. That's everything. Manipulate it. So it does nicely for me. And for a game that's technically, I mean, was it 2014? The second edition came out, but as I say, it literally just adds a few extra cards. It's not a change of the game. I'd still happily break out the first edition if I had it, and it's 2004. It's insanely old. I wonder how what's your oldest game on your list?
My oldest game was actually Modern Art with 1992.
Oh, that is your oldest, right?
It is, yeah.
Have a good. There's definitely some love for your auction games, I got to admit, but yeah, I'm certainly none of the auction games are going to be my ones. Although I like the fact that the chat is guessing a lot of different games here as to whether they're going to be on my list or this list in general. So this will be good. We'll see. Give yourself a point if you get if you get one right. That's the way it is. But yeah, number 10. So moving on to 9s.
So my number 9 is something I think you're not going to be too keen on this one, Luke, but this is a Power Grid by Friedman Fries, going back to 2004. I still think this game is fantastic. I know you're not a fan of it.
I'll be good. I'll be good.
No, it's fine. Actually, to be honest, out of all the games on this list, I think this is the one that is the most polarizing. I can completely understand why people do not like this game. I know a lot of people do like it, but I see it's not to everyone's taste. It's very dry. It's very mathematical as you are trying to very carefully weight your bidding on to get these different power plants, actually plan the cost of these routes to claim these different paths and things. But I think the actual structure of this game is so well done and almost timeless because it is just broken down into the little phases. The auction phase, buy your resources, build your routes, and pretty much get going. So there's no faff with this one. There's no bloat to it, and I think it just flows really well. Additionally, I love games that have a supply and demand mechanism to them. So that's actually one of my favorite things. If someone's going to completely specialize in oil or whatever it is, then that's they've got a stronghold on that market. You're competing somewhere, and you're just going to end up costing yourself more money. Let's zig and zag and go to something other resource in order to exploit that and get bargains in terms of getting those resources for cheaper. But I think this game holds up extremely well. I know, again, it's not for everyone's taste. People there's no murkiness, there's no fuzziness to this game, which I think is either going to help it in some people's minds or going to hurt it for some people's minds. So you're either going to love it because you can very meticulously plan things and get things down to the individual coin or electro, whatever it's called in this game. Where if you had a bit of murkiness, then you could perhaps go on more of a gut instinct and not have that AP of getting the calculators out and working out what you can spend or not. But I think the structure of the game is fun. I think it's great. It's there's nothing I don't like about it, actually. I think this is going to hold up for a long time to come. And maybe out of all these games, this one's kind of held a bit higher in regard and kept alive more by the old guard of the time. This is going back to 2004. I think a lot of the fans in 2004 are probably a big bulk of the people who are still playing it now. But it still has, it's still rated extremely highly. I think it's in the top 100 still on BGG. So that's got to say something, considering how many games are coming out now. But I love this one. I'd highly recommend it if you like economic games. I think it's great.
I would never place enough rank. I'd never place COP on the Board Game Geek rankings, though, considering the rankings barely change for a lot of games. I mean, Twilight Struggle is still somewhere in the top 10, 20 games or whatever, and nobody plays it. It's and about 10 people in the world it would appeal to. So it's I wouldn't. As soon as a game gets stuck in the top load of rankings, it never falls off. But even so, as I say, and yeah. Not liking it is an understatement. This is one of my most hated games. You clearly have a love for auction games. Your first two have already mentioned 4 auction games, so that is clearly your genre.
Well, to be honest, a lot of the older Euro games had some kind of auction to it. I don't think there's much more auctions on my list, if any. So that could be the end of that. Draw a line under those games as the auction games. But it was a pivotal part of the older Euro games. It's kind of an also balancing thing, I suppose.
It definitely, I mean, this one definitely was the hype round then, and there was, when I first started getting into the gaming myself, there was more emphasis on people trying to play this, but then after about a year or two, I've never seen this on the table anymore. Now, granted, there is one club I could go to where I suspect it would be on the table every week, but like you said, the old lot that you mentioned as to keeping it alive, yeah, it basically is an old lot keeping it alive in that particular club. It's literally bang on. But I don't know, is it aged well? It's still popular, I guess, so I suppose it does fit the definition. I mean, like I say, I think with all of these, us deciding if it's aged well is going to be horrendously biased, because if you don't like the game, you don't think it aged well.
Well, I understand that to a point, but there are some games out there that I personally don't like or don't think they're great, but I still think they feel like if they were released today, there's a market for them and people would still like them. So I do think there's some, well, obviously, of course, it's subjective, but I do think there's an element of objectivity to it, if you try to think that way. But because I don't know about you, Luke. Do you obviously you don't like it, but do you feel like this is outdated? Do you feel like it couldn't fit in today's marketplace if it was to come out today? Or?
I think it would be a bit outdated today. It's a very base. I mean, the premise of it is connect routes and do auctions. Auctions is not a very popular genre now, I've noticed. A lot of modern games these days don't throw in an auction mechanic. At least not that I'm seeing. A lot of the older games, like you said, had that. And I feel like maybe the auction phase is now, no pun intended, has kind of gone away. And now none of the other games use them, because even what's the most recent one with an auction? Tinner's Trail, and even then that's just a re-implementation of an older game. So, yeah. And with this one, and also it would need a serious aesthetic upgrade as well if it was coming out again.
Maybe, I can understand that. I think a lot of people would expect a lot more visually nowadays than maybe they did back then. But I know there is a huge bunch of people, me being one of them, that loves this really
Yeah.
dry, dusty, murky looking thing. That really ticks the box for me. I love it. But
Do you put tissue paper on the countries that you're not playing with?
no, I actually use the other buildings to make a little shield wall to block them off.
That's what I mean. The one game I've seen friends of mine put tissue paper on in order to cover up the countries. It's like you can't even. It's like, why don't you make it? I don't know, a little easier to to like showcase what's there, because the amount of times either myself or other people have got it wrong, that, oh, I can't go into that area, and it screws up your entire plan. It's like madness. But
Yeah, that's
plays it
true.
up, and a lot of people will play it up to 6. I mean, Greg plays it up to 6. Eric plays it up to 5. Oh man, I last time I played it with up to 6, I wanted to self harm. I literally like, this game is never ending. This auction has been going on for 10 minutes. Can we please wrap this auction up? Just buy his electric plant. It's like it became a little bit crazy, but yeah, as I it regardless of my hatred for it, I'm not as convinced this one would sell well today. I think that people, the problem is these days when you want a heavy Euro, people are more interested in having like 100 mechanics shoved into the game. It's like this one might be like,
Yeah,
what? It only has auctions. That's too simple. That's child's play for us. It's like, that does seem to be the way. I've only got
that's
to look
very
at
true.
Rotoku on my table right now to know that that's the case. Heavy games have got to throw in 5 mechanics in order to be accepted now.
Yeah, you are completely right. I think a lot of people think complexity is the same as depth. It's not.
Nope.
Exactly. It doesn't need to have all those rules in to
Mm,
be a great meaty thinky game.
yeah.
Weight is not just in rules; it's completely in thought space and decision space as well. So that's probably one of the reasons why I think Power Grid does hold up well, because it doesn't have any of that faff. It doesn't have any fluff, no bloats. But hey, don't like it, don't like it. Fair enough.
Nah, that is fine with that one. Alrighty, my number 9. I was kind of a little concerned with this one. I wasn't certain if it would like work now, but it does seem to work as a good, what we call it, like filler game, because fillers do occasionally come through the woodwork and say like, oh yeah, this is a really good solid game. They take off because they can be played by all sorts of people. My dad's really loves it. It's one of the favorite like 2 players I've brought back, and it's still popular to this day. I go with Jaipur. Yeah, because there's a lot of 2 players out there. Now, I did consider Patchwork, although I feel that with all the tile laying games, I think people are starting to get a little bit tired of seeing a tile laying game these days, particularly in the Tetris style. But with this one, even, regardless of which implementation you do, because it's literally just an aesthetics upgrade, there's no actual change to the gameplay. This one
Yeah.
still holds up in either regard. A 2-player game that is very simple to teach, has a decent set of kind of like tactical depth to it, of the whole like trading with 2 players, which doesn't tend to happen very much. I mean, trying to do a trading game with 2 players is quite a tricky one in itself. There's decent tense decisions of like, do I take the camels? Do I sell now to get the tokens, drain them, or shall I wait and hope that I can get the cards I need? And it's done and dusted within about 30 minutes or so. These little fillers do come out now and again. I mean, remember Love Letter when that came out in
Yeah.
2013, so that wouldn't count for this list, but Love Letter came out and just took the world by storm. And so occasionally you do get these filler games just turn up, light games that completely go nuts. I mean, I'm trying to think of like other particular filler ones. I suppose Barron Park would be a pretty good example. That one 30, 45 minutes to play or something. It's not quite a filler box, but again, it's a light game, and that was talked about for a long time. People wanted a copy of it. And so maybe I think there is a market still for these games that are very simple, approachable, gateway game level, that are just like, right, can I just have something nice and simple, please?
Yeah, I think that's a really good choice, Luke. And actually, I'm surprised I overlooked this one because, as you said, really does a great job of implementing that market system, which most games don't do at 2 players. And it has that real hustle and bustle thing. Grab some cards, smash them all down. The market fills up. Am I going to grab that many cards because it's going to give you the advantage to get all these other choices? Really nice flow and pacing to this one. Yeah, really good choice.
Yeah, the Lydia makes a good point actually. Like Jaika can also be played in coffee shops. Nowadays, we are getting to this point now, particularly post-COVID, that everybody is now starting to pop back into like game cafes or coffee shops in order to play a few games, and having something that does fit on the table nicely kind of helps.
Yeah.
I know Fraglins mentioned Biblios, and as much as Biblios I prefer as a game, that one I'm not convinced has aged as well. And one thing that does put me off that one, thinking of that on the list, was that they re-implemented that one and they called it The King and I or something weird. I can't remember that.
The King and I, yeah.
Yeah, and it's like
For the King and me.
yeah, The King and Me, and you basically, I mean, you took a bland theme from before, which has no bearing on the game anyway, and somehow made it worse with a dumber title, and it's just like, oh yeah, maybe that one is a bit of a product of its time. But you know, is it one of the best small box games? If I was to put a top 10 of like the best ones for everybody, then possibly yes. It's not one of my like top 10 favorites. I still have it because I will still play it, and my dad loves this, so it's always in the bag when I go home to visit the parents. So he enjoys it, and you know he can put up a bit of a challenge against me as well because you know there is some luck factor in it, which is always good. But yeah, you know, approachable little fillers, and I would like to see more of these, please. I'm getting tired of 3 hour monster euros being the only thing that gets released now. You know, I don't remember bringing home a single midweight euro from Essen. Now, some of that was because the one that was there, I think Icky or whatever, I didn't get a chance to play. But yeah, the majority of them that I've got on the table here is like heavy, 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 heavy. It's like, come on, just a little bit of streamlining wouldn't hurt. Ah, well, such is the way of the world now. All right, move on to AIDS.
Okay, so my number 8 is something that, again, not many people have heard of, at least nowadays. This is a bit of a hidden gem for me. This is a game called Ys. It's just spelled Y-S. It's one word, Y-S. This is actually an older Istaro game dating back to 2004. And I actually only recently played this game, and I was blown away with it. So this is a kind of a bluffing area control style game, as you have these basically these pillars, and you're putting one face up and one face down and deploying them on this map. This map's divided into 4 quarters, and those quarters are divided further into 3 sections. So you're not only trying to compete for the majorities in all the quarters in order to score these gems, but also within the thirds within those quarters in order to get additional points or to get these bonus cards in the corners here. And those are really cool. Lightning fast game. You can get this game done in an hour comfortably. And I suppose this is probably one of the first games that, at least I can think of date-wise, that had that kind of commodity speculation on it where you don't quite know what the things are going to be worth at the end because it's changing as the game goes on. But the idea is you're trying to collect these gems, but another space on the board, you can actually manipulate the power of those gems. So one space is moving them up 2 spaces on this tracks, one's moving, or depending on where they end up, they can go up or down. But I love the fact in this game that if you completely have a runaway leader of, say, the most valuable gem, it doesn't mean they're going to absolutely smash your scoring, because only you basically score a fixed amount of points for having the majority. So you don't score 10 points for each gem you have of the highest scoring one. You'll say, you score 25 points and that's what you're going to get. The second place will score 20 points. So you do have to kind of spin the plates and only try and win marginally. So again, it stops that runaway thing going on. It has a slight, that bluffing aspect where you can try and divert people into thinking what you're going to do, where in reality you're putting down your low crappy tokens. And it's really great. Just one of the another classic Euro. Again, not to everyone's taste in terms of the way it looks, maybe, but the gameplay is fun. It is really fun in the way it works. And it just is peppy, it's quick, it's engaging. And I think this is, again, if this was released now, maybe with a different name, a different theme, I think it all has all the DNA to be a big hit. But
well,
hopefully...
It definitely needs a different name aside theme. I mean, YS is like that would never work these days, and it would definitely need an aesthetic upgrade. I mean, Emily had the same thought as mine. The first thing I looked at this board and I thought, is this Red Cathedral? It's like, no, Red Cathedral is different from this one because I don't recognize the other tracks, and there's obviously more to it. But I was almost tempted to say, like, hands up anybody who's heard of this game.
Well, that's kind of one of the things here, because a lot of the older games that do hold up well, people do still talk about them in one way or another. This one, nobody talks about it, nobody plays it. But out of most of the Euros of yesteryear, this one feels one of the most contemporary because it is so quick, and it does have. Again, it's not stuffy. It's not really a boring game, if you want to put it that way. It does feel, again, it feels quick. It feels like a bit cheeky in the way you deploy your things, and you can use them in different ways. And There's also some really interesting mechanisms in terms of like breaking ties and things, because you can keep some these tokens back, and that will let you break ties if you're tying in a region. So clever. Like literally everything is streamlined down to the bone in this game, but it works magically. And I would highly recommend this one if you like these style games. It's brilliant.
Hard to tell if I would like it or not. My worry is if it's aged well, then why has no one heard of it?
Well, I've tried to. Fair point, but I try to look at these games objectively. You know, are the mechanisms contemporary? Do they feel like if this game was released today, would would it hold up? And I think, on its own regard, this game came out 2004, I believe. If it was released today, would it still feel like a 2021 game? I think yes, it would.
2004, yeah. So that's fair enough. Back of the Shelf podcast agrees with you as well on that front. So I'll concede on that point. But okay, fair enough. I mean, Yastari, I barely played any of their games anyway because they literally come out and then like die after about a year or something. They don't tend to get reprinted with the odd occasional except. In fact, no, I can't think of any exceptions. I'm not sure. I'm not aware of any Yastari game current that's around. I wonder if we got a look here. Not including ones that they've just simply reprinted though, because I mean all 6 of them. Oh no, Kalos. Although, did they do the re-implementation? I don't think they did.
I don't think so. Could be
no. So I'm not entirely certain if any of Bombay, Assyria, Industry, Olympus. I mean, there's a lot of these games I wouldn't play. Although I did used to play Spirium. That was one I used to play. Shakespeare. Don't know if you know that's out of print now. So yeah, all of them seem to be kind of out of print for Yastari. But yeah, I'm curious why no one's sort of gone and picked up some of the games. But okay, cool. Alrighty. As I say, it's definitely unheard of, and there's definitely some good feedback here as to like, a hidden gem I've not heard of. Mine aren't.
That's
mine aren't going to be that hidden, I can tell you that.
This is the most hidden one of mine, for sure.
Okay, right. I'm going into abstract territory then for my 8. This isn't even one I own. I would own it if I could get it to the table more, because I still think it's a good game. It's had free versions, but honestly, they've only tweaked it slightly in each one. I could happily play it in its normal version, and the original one was like 2006. As much as it tries to give a theme, it doesn't really have one, as much as Portal tries their best to do it. But I would give some credit to Neuroshima Hex that I still see played now and again. And if you go to PortalCon or Poland, anywhere like that, oh my god, they love it over there. It is one of their like major things. I've been to PortalCon and I have seen entire rooms with Neuroshima Hex tournaments. There's a crowd out there that enjoys this game outside of the app and could wipe the floor with me in an instant. But the rules for this, all the different set of races that you have got. So you bring out a big master set of this, you could easily have all the variety content there. The rules are pretty streamlined for the most part, taking a tile and sticking it on the board. But then you have got that really cool puzzle aspect of trying to work out where all the different, this tile is going to throw a net on this one's going to shoot this one's going to hit my base, not if I stick this one down. That crunchy puzzle aspect that a lot of people want from, a modern Euro, let alone an abstract game. But, most abstract games might not age as well if they just look like a plain old chessboard. Like I considered Yinch, one of my favorite gift series games, but I can't imagine that aged well in a sense. I love it, but if you were to release it today, I don't think anybody would pass it a second glance, because a lot of abstract games don't get a second glance, particularly when you go to Essen. But Neuroshima Hex, I think, would be one that would do. I mean, these are the old tiles that you've got. The newer version looks considerably better, but yeah, just a nice puzzle board, lots of different abilities, lots of different factions. I reckon this would still hold up. Well, it still holds up because it's still available, but considering this came out in 2006 and still is one of Portal's best sellers, it works for me.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I've not played this one, but one that I definitely want to try, because I quite like the idea of the concept of it, and nothing else does things quite like the way this does. So I like the idea of, again, programming everything and just seeing what plays out. Yeah, good choice, and I'd certainly be willing to try this one. And I didn't even realize it was that old. So there you go. That shows it has aged quite well, I suppose.
Over that. I like the fact that back in the shelf it was like a heavy miniatures game also. It's like, yep. I mean, it would give you that impression at first when you look at all the artwork and that, and then it's like, oh no, we're just putting tiles on the board. It's like, oh right, okay, it's a bit more different than I thought. But yeah, as Max said, it's still alive in Poland. Granted, I suspect that's the country that's most alive, but 2006, they're still playing that and not any other specific abstract game, and the game is fun. I just don't have the facility to play it as often. Occasionally I play it on the app. In fact, I've got the new version that they sent me. I've still yet to try it out, but that's kind of where I tend to play this game on the app. I'm rubbish at it. I'm not very good, but it's just like, oh, I fancy playing this faction now. I'll play this faction now. And a lot of the older games didn't used to have a ton of variety in the box, so for this one to have that variety, granted not all of it was with the base game, but then it's very easy to basically just go, oh, here you go, here's a faction pack. Doesn't change the rules, doesn't change the core of the game, we're just adding a little bit of extra content now and again. So DLC before DLC was a thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, cool. Really, really cool choice. And I think as Back of the Shelf said, it does look like, and the name sounds like it's something that it's not. But I was luckily, I knew what this game was about. How does it play differently at 2 to say 3 or 4? Because is it a bit too chaotic at that player count, or is it best at 2?
Too chaotic, yeah. I mean, pretty much every Neuroshima Hex fan will say it's best at 2, or religiously only plays it with 2. As soon as you put 3 or 4, the puzzle aspect gets a bit out of control, not to mention the chaos factor of how the fight resolves gets a bit out of hand. When I've seen tournaments play, it's always 1-on-1, and I've always treated it as a 1-on-1.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, as much as they've tried to put 2 to 4 to make it sell more, it's like, no, come on, Ignacy, admit yourself. You don't play this with 4 players, admit it. All right, 7s.
Okay, so my number 7 is going back to 2007, and if you watch my list, I very rarely do a list without a Steffenfeld game. This is my Steffenfeld pick of the litter for this list. This is In the Year of the Dragon. So, In the Year of the Dragon is, I think one of the reasons this holds up more than anything is that I can't think of any other game that does what this game does, or gives the impression that this does as a lasting effect. Because this is very strange, because this is not the traditional point salad style game you'd expect from a Feld. This isn't mechanism within mechanism and interlocking things as you'd expect from a Feld. This is a completely different change of pace for him. And I always describe this game as kind of weathering the storm. This is a game of attrition, trying to get through these hardships that are pounding you from start to finish, and squeezing any point out of this game is an absolute nightmare. And that might put a lot of people off, and again, understandably so. But I just think there's no other game that does this quite well, since this has come out, in my opinion. I might be wrong on that, but you are literally given a bunch of events in a random order. They can be things such as like famine, or it can be you got to give your people medicine. You got to build them homes, because you need to actually have the right people in the right places, and then you need to have the money in order to keep them going in playing at all. Because if you can't pay for them, then they're gone. And it's just a constant game of getting the right people in at the right time, kicking them out at the right time, playing these cards in the right order to make sure you've got the right staff members. It is so clever. More I play this game, the more I love it. It's an absolute gem of a game. A lot of people think it's extremely punishing, extremely brutal.
Just a tad.
And it is, but that is but that is one of the good things about it, because it's one of those times where, rather than being showered in points, you have that maybe tiniest bit of slack on that rope to jump in and grab a point or 2, and then carry on that way. And it's a low scoring game, but I think it's phenomenal and one of Feld's best. Not one of his most popular, but if this was repackaged today, maybe doesn't even need anything else. Just needs a kick up the ass to say this game is out there. You can buy it if you like, and I think it would be a big hit, because Steffenfeld's reputation is so strong that his older games can just have a new fresh lick of paint and don't change anything mechanically.
Well,
I think it's perfect the way it is. It'll still hold up.
Can we change 1 or 2 mechanical things about it? make it not so depressing.
But I love that. I love that fact that it's you don't think you're going to get through it. How are you going to weather the storm? And one way or another, you will get through it. go from highs to lows, again, squeezing every point out of it you can. And I just think it's wonderful.
Is this one you prefer over Trajan? Someone's asked. Barker's asked.
No, Trajan's my number one Feld by miles.
Ah, well, to be fair, if you're gonna like Feld, you're gonna like that one, aren't you? So, not one of my favorite designers by far. But although for some reason Cocapelli worked with me, I still like that one. But I joke in that I like Cocapelli because it doesn't feel like a Feld, so it has to not be like a Feld in order for me to like a Feld, which is kind of odd. But it's I don't know with this one. I know we've got a lot of games that can. We don't have that many punishing games these days. There's only got a lot of like heavy games or mechanical games like this. But I just wonder if this one would just be so punishing that people would. I mean, that's what puts me off it. Is like nothing nice happens in this game. It's like you start and already you're losing, and then you lose a bit more, and then you build a couple of homes and then they go fall down. It's
yeah, but it's one of those games where that is the game. It's not an annoying thing that's tacked onto the side of it. Like say, it's not like a lot of these games where, think of like Agricola or something like that, where you have to feed your workers, and that's just a horrible nagging burden of the game where you just want to crack them with other things. This is what this game is about. It is about weathering that storm, and it's not pretending to be anything but that. So I don't think it's a distraction. It's what the actual game is, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does what it says on the tin. It basically kicks you in the teeth and doesn't stop. But then some other modern games like Lorenzo, for example, I can't stand because that one has a similar thing of like, right, every turn you want to do something cool, but you can't. Punish. It's like, die, kick in the teeth. It's like, I want to have... Barrage is another one. It's like, I want to have some ability to do well. It's why games like Converter I prefer compared to Agricola, because Agricola is very punishing as well. If someone blocks your get a baby space, you've basically lost the game. But at least in Converter, I can sort of go, right, well, I don't need to get a tomato randomly to not lose negative points, but I can have 100 sheep and get 100 points. I like a little bit of, like, I want to do this. Now, punishment, I don't mind if it's a co-op, because people are mentioning things like Robinson Crusoe and one of my favorites, and also This War of Mine. I love it to bits. In a co-op, I don't mind it too much, especially when it's story-driven. If it's story-driven, you want it to be a bit dark and gritty. You want to like have a happy ending, hopefully, so you want to try and get through that slog. But also in a co-op, you're working together as a team against the game, as opposed to still... Because in this one, it's not just the game beating you down, but you're technically getting beaten down by the other players, because depending on what they do, you might get beaten down even more. It is basically sadism the game.
Yeah, it really is. But I suppose... Because, I mean, I don't like really in-your-face confrontational games where it's take that and things, but this one, you're jumping in front of a track, you're going to get priority next turn. Or you're going to grab the best cards that you thought other people were going to do. So it's all kind of passive aggressive. But yeah, the vibe is not a pleasant game. It's not a game that's going to leave you all in a fun, light-spirited mood. But I think once it's done, you think wow, we got through that, and that was a hell of an experience. But hey, if you don't like Feld, fair enough.
No, this whole like thematic thing with the dragons in the background is like that. Now, if the game was about defending from dragons, maybe I'd like it a bit more. I don't know. It's like a little rice famine, and a little bit of disease. No, if we're defending from dragons, maybe. But poor blimey, yeah. This was kind of like one of the most feldiest of felds, and I'm just like, right. Not only is it dry as a bone, but I'm also being kicked in the teeth a lot. It's like it's like it wasn't working for me on there. Although Max makes a good point actually that. This is one of the first times on the list where the tastes of games have been drastically different. Auction games and Felds have already started on your side, and I've had like a lot of stuff behind it. It's like, yeah, cool, blimey, yeah, we have got different shelves. Yeah. In fact, can I see any games behind you there? That's all Feld stuff behind you.
Literally, all the games you made that you don't like, they're all my favourite games. So if anything, we got 20 games here that are vastly different, and they'll all stand time.
I'm seeing it there, yeah. Oh, no. I just wanted a bigger look at your Venezuela. It's like, I like Underwater Cities, like a few of the others, but yeah, there's definitely a few there where I'm like,
my dry stuff's over there.
Well, Underwater Cities is dry as a bone as well, but I just really enjoyed the mechanic of that one.
Ironically, yeah.
It is a different... some do slip the net. I do get some ones. Pulsar 2849 being like the poster child for like, I should not like this game, but it works.
Yeah, it does.
Alrighty. 7. Right. Well, if you haven't heard of this game, then you have not been playing games, frankly. It's although to be fair, I could say that about a few of them on my list. I still believe, and I think this someone might be the one I'm going to get some contention on from the chat. Deck building is still, a fun mechanic used, although these days it's been shoehorned into a lot of Euro games as a side thing. I still think deck builders pure can still work. Nobody cares about the theme too much in the deck builder, and the age-old great one, which when was it released? 2008. I think still works nicely for Dominion. I would still happily bring out my box and play this, with or without expansions, because it's got enough replay value in it. It is perfectly dry and Yuri. It even has the whole medieval theme, which, let's face it, seems to be the most popular theme utilized in gaming right now. So, for better or worse, depending on what you like. But yeah, just a simple mechanical deck builder that can be played by others. Yes, you could probably do with giving it a bit of an art upgrade as presented here, because the art never got good in this game at any point in time. But I'd still gladly bring this out and play it. It's just super fast, super simple, yet gives you the ability to make all your cool combos, look at the 10 cards and go, right, well, if I combine that with this can do this, right, let's give it a go, run it through, done, get victory points, the end. It's not trying to have a theme, and if it is, it's doing a very poor job of it. But I don't know what other these tokens are that they're using, but I guess Dominion's had some iterations over time. But I still, like I say, it's bland looking, but it's basic. But I still think a deck builder like this, that's just simple, boom, nice and quick, could work.
Yeah,
but I reckon the chat might disagree on this.
No, to us, this one really appeals to me. One of my confessions is I've never ever played Dominion, actually, because when I first got into the hobby, the first game I ever played was Legendary Marvel. So that was, I kind of did a deep dive into that, got everything. I had no reason to pick up another and dive into another deck builder. So it's one of those games that kind of just sailed past me, and I never had a chance or any reason to go back and visit it. But I'd love to play it, but I've just never had anybody bring it to the table. I think I'd really like it, because I like games that are streamlined. It's a very simple system here. And I like medieval themes, and I could play medieval games a million times and never get bored. So yeah, cool. I know it's massively popular still. How many expansions? 20 expansions or something? So
you don't even need them. That's the thing, because you might think, well, hang on, it's been expanded to the wazoo, so doesn't that invalidate it? It's like, nope, my box up there has 3. Or maybe 4, I don't know, early ones. I picked like my favorites, but honestly, I would still, if somebody just had the base game of Dominion, I'd still play it, because you've still got something like 16, 20 different cards in there, and you pick 10 of like the sets, so you can still get a decent amount of variety in there. And then just one expansion, you've just basically doubled your like replay value in there. But there does seem to be most people seem to be fine with Dominion as a choice. So obviously naming their more favorite deck builders that they like Star Realms or Zaon's End and a couple of other ones. But Marvel Legendary, for example. But I wouldn't say no to this one having a, well, it would invalidate the one I've got, but some decent version of it, because even when they did bring it out in the second edition, it still looked naff. This game just cannot catch a break in terms of its artwork. But I'm surprised you've not played it, though.
Yeah, it's one of those things. There's a few games out there that are just immensely popular that I just not had a chance to play, and for no real reason other than the fact that I'm not going to buy it myself, and nobody I know has it either. So simple as that. I would certainly no reason why I haven't played it. If someone had asked me to play it, I would be more than happy to, but just haven't done it in.
I was gonna say, find a game cafe. If a game cafe doesn't have this, only if it's out of print. No, actually, you can get the second edition now. No, every game cafe should have a copy of Dominion in there somewhere. I suppose there's more pleasing looking deck builders to entice new players in, but I'd still think you'd get some play about that one. I have to see. I don't think Donald does any games anymore though, so I think perhaps he's done and dusted. Yeah, I think he's kind of done and dusted now. Everyone's got to retire at some point. All right, 6s.
Okay, so speaking about games or just out over my shoulder, I think you just missed off the shot there. My number 6 is Trois. So Trois is a dice-driven game that goes back to 2010. This is I suppose this is the epitome of dryness because you can actually almost see the gears working in this game. It's very mechanical in the way everything comes together as you have a bunch of dice, and then you're allocating those dice on different cards. As you mentioned with Dominion, this game is massively replayable because from game to game, the setup vastly changes and they can all change, really affect the game and how it plays. But kind of another throwback and saying that these older Euro games have a bit more of an edge to them, a bit more fierce and have their claws. This one is pretty nasty if you look at it a certain way because your dice are not necessarily your dice because you're rolling a bunch and you can plan your turn, but people can jump in and give you money and snatch those dice and steal all your best ones and use them how they want. But you do get compensated with money. But I try to think of any other game that does some of the mechanisms that this one does, particularly the fact that when you compound your dice together and you divide them by a value on other cards, like you can see here, some cards might say, add all your pit values together, you get, say, combined value of 15, and then you divide that by 3, and then you can do a certain action 5 times. Again, very, very mathematical, very dry, if you want to look at it that way. But I think it's a great system, and there's so much potential in how you can do that. I love the way that the cards synergize with each other. I actually think this is a beautiful game. I know people might look at it and think, ugh, but for me, I think it's absolutely marvelous, and the way it looks of that medieval theme, it comes together wonderfully. But this is, considering dice drafters and dice-driven Euros are really quite a pivotal thing in the hobby at the moment. It seems like a lot of Euros use dice in one way or another. This one, despite being nearly 12 years old now, 11, 12 years old, it still feels different for me. And I know they tried to almost tweak it with Black Angel, with the sci-fi theme, but for me, this is where the magic is, and I think it's a timeless game. It's going to hold up for a long time to come. So adore this game. That is Trois.
I honestly can't comment on this one because I've still not played it. Granted, I will play any game once, I've always said that, but in terms of games I've not looked out for, this would be one of them, because I feel bad for ravaging on Dominion's artwork, but that is just bad. Is that what the game looks like?
Yeah, it absolutely does look like that. but that's the art of the time. It's what the game's set in. So
yeah. I mean, the board doesn't look too bad with all the dice. I got to try it out just to see. I mean, I don't get why you're taking dice and dividing them by values to do stuff, but like I said, it's a mathematical dry game, so I know for a fact that there's no theme in this whatsoever, and I think half of mine are a bit like that as well. But I don't know, I got to try it at some point just to get it off my checklist, because I want to try at least like every game in the top 100 if I can at some stage of my life, and this is one that's, I'm not sure if it's still up there, but it's certainly been up there that I need to. So yeah, probably actually is one that's aged well, because I think if it did come out today, it'd still probably get some buzz. Dice,
so.
anything involving dice where it's not just simply roll it and see, does get some love. What's your favorite player count? People have been asking that.
I would probably say 3. 3 is normally the sweet spot for Euros for me, and I don't think Trois is an exception for that. So yeah, I'd say 3, but I've got no issue with any player count, to be honest.
Yeah, 3 does seem to say 2 and 3 seems to be the. Apparently, it's too chaotic if you go above that.
It's a kind of chaotic game anyway, because it's mostly I like strategic games, but this one you are having to act a bit more tactically because you cannot plan to the precise degree of things because people can just snatch your dice on their turn. So you do have to kind of, again, zig and zag it when it comes to that time. But I actually think you might like this one, Luke, because to be honest, a lot of people who don't like Euro games have a bit of a soft spot affinity for Trois. So give it a go. I'd recommend you do.
It's definitely one that, like, if a mate of mine has got it, I will play it, because I mean it's a short game as well, and it's not that long.
It's fine. I mean, you can get it maybe a 2-player game done in 75 minutes, but generally hour and a half.
Yeah, that I don't believe that. I mean, I know the Board Game Geek rating systems are broken, especially the rate one, but this game does not sound like a 3.5.
Give or take, maybe slightly lighter. It's not terribly easy, terribly difficult to understand the rules, but as you said, because the cards all kind of merge with each other and synergize in weird ways, then there is potential to get a bit brain burnery. But and of course the dividing and division and mathing things out is a bit more complex than might first appear.
But to put this into context here, weight 3.75 for Batoku that is sitting on my table right now. 3.75 3.47. You're telling me that the monstrosity that is this game, you're telling me that is only slightly heavier than Trois. It's like that. I'm not getting that sense of heaviness from Trois. That's just like a rag on the system because I just don't get how the rating scale is meant to work. But if someone shows me it, I'll try it. But this actually does sound like one that probably would hold up more these days because I think it did get reprinted recently. I thought it did. Not like with any decent artwork or anything like that, but I thought somebody actually did bring it back into print.
Yeah, I think it's remained in print since the get go. So yeah, I know it's still popular, and I love it. I think it's
the thing is, it's
great.
been re-implemented by Trois Dice. Well, the game's already a dice game, so how does this work?
Trois Dice is literally the roll and write version. It's nothing like the original.
No interest in that.
Not even comparable.
No, I'll stick to the main game if someone wants to show me it on that one. I'm not gonna play some roll and write version of it. Okie doke. Right. So 6 on me is where are we? Oh yeah. I've got no objection to putting a party game on the list if I feel it has aged well. This one, 2008. It's had 100 expansions just to add more cards to it. It did have another version in 2011, but frankly, it was the same game. They just changed a component in it. But I'll still play this with the family. I'll still take this to game nights. I still show this to like gateway gamers. I've even used it with. To be fair, one funny story is that I used it on an ex-girlfriend's family once, where I used the phrase, "This card reminds me of her," and then watch as the family basically puts out cards with witches and crows all over them to describe their own daughter. It's like, okay, what am I not being told here? But I still find Dixit to hold up really well these days. It's still a great laugh of fun. 2008, so this is already like 13 years old. It's still played, and we're using that mechanic.
I think I might have lost Luke again.
More and more with things like, well, there we go. That's all right. Minor blip in the Wi-Fi thing, but yeah,
cool.
Mysterium, Dixit, yeah, Detective Club, Obscurio, all these games that are using that mechanic still hold up today. Mysterium's still one of the most popular games that there is out there. You know, it gets played a lot at my game night along with Detective Club because people can just it's so easy to teach people, look, it's a picture, speaks 1,000 words, interpret it how you like. This doesn't require a ton of like specific rules explanations. And yeah, it's a party game, but there are some party games. I mean, like Time's Up is one that I've got there. I don't think that's aged well at all. That feels like a product of its time, even though I find it fun. Same with something like Telestrations. Love it, makes me laugh my head off. Boulder Dash makes me laugh my head off, but they are certainly products of their time. This one, though, doesn't feel to me like something that came out in 2008. Yeah, this feels like something that's like the last 5 years. I could see, well, Libelou did this one, but I mean, you look at Ludonauts and sit-down games, they put a lot of these very light, colourful games out. I could see Blue Orange having done this in another multiverse effectively. It does fill up their work.
Yeah, absolutely. Completely agree. And for me, you mentioned all the other games that use the same system. I think Dixit is still the best out of all of them because it cuts straight through all the rubbish, straight to the crux of the game and the crux of the fun, again and again and again, just the fun part. And I think is a great game. One of those games that I really play any time. I don't have to be in the right mood to play it. I'm always in the right mood to play Dixit. So yeah, I think this is a really good choice and one that's so appealing to so many different people. And if it came out today, I think it would be a monster hit still.
Yeah, it's still on that one, although I don't quite agree with this one. It's like better than any of those games re-implementing. I don't know. I love Mysterium, Detective Club, and Obscurio more, but then I still really like Dixit. So yeah, Dixit didn't make. Actually, did it make my top 100? It might have done in the bottom load of it, but the others have been, higher up so far. So there's nothing saying that, oh, right, the mechanic's being done better now. But if somebody wants to play Dixit on a game night, by all means, I'll lose. Probably, because that tends to happen with Dixit, because I give people way too much credit for how, like, oh, that's very crafty with your clue. It's like, clearly you're trying to make me think of this without making it too obvious, and then you reveal it, and it's like, oh, you literally were just spelling it out. Seriously, come on. I gave you credit as a genius. Why have you let me down? It tends to happen so often there. But as I say, I
Yeah.
don't mind if you like Dixit more. That's fine. As long as you like one of these games, I'm happy with it. Or if you like all of them and prefer Dixit, great. As long as you like them all, that's what you want. Uh, I don't find that you have to explain. Oh, I see what you mean about explaining the cards. Yeah, you have to say why you did it. Although to be fair, you do that in Dixit anyway. Granted, the crux of the game doesn't involve you having to justify the card to get the points. But once I find out you meant this card instead of this card, I demand your explanation. It's like, you don't get away with the next round before we move on. It's like, no, you explain why it's not this card, mate.
Yeah, really fun game. It's one of those games where you don't really care if you win or lose anyway. It's just a fun activity. So love it.
Nah,
Great choice.
it's a good thing for that because I don't win it often enough to care. So
Same.
on to fives.
Okay, so if you haven't found any of my other games dry so far, this one takes it to the next level in dryness. This is
You've just mentioned in here the dragon. Can you get much more dry into the field? Trajan? Are you about to say Trajan? Don't you dare say Trajan.
No, I'm not going to say Trajan. So my number 5, going back to 2009, is Hansa Teutonica. So Hansa Teutonica, Andreas Stedding design. For me, this one is still one of the best examples of engine building done right, one of the purest forms of route building as well. As basically you're trying to connect cities together. But when you build certain cities, you are going to get upgrades, and you're going to be able to get more points when you get your biggest route, or you can take more actions, or you can move cubes faster, or you can take more from your kind of general supply into your common supply. And a bit like, again, talk about the older Euros, games like Trois we mentioned, this one does have some clause to it as well, as you can deliberately block people and they're going to have to spend more cubes to get you out of the way, but you almost benefit off that. So despite being somewhat confrontational, it's incentivized to be that way. Yeah, but there is an incentive to do it. So you're not just putting things just down to be annoying. You are going to benefit off that because you get to duplicate and spread even faster. I think this game is great. One of the most slick and silky engine building systems out there. One of the best, maybe even one of the first games that use that system where you have your board, and the more you pull cubes off, the better things are getting, and it also gives you more coverage on the board as well because you have more cubes to deploy. I actually played this one just the other night, and with two other players who haven't played it before. They both absolutely loved it. It reminded me why I loved it, and I still think this is one of the best route building Euros out there, and an absolute classic. And I can't see that changing anytime soon. You want to do everything, but you can't do everything, and you got to not only worry about what you're doing, but worry about what other people are doing as well. So I think it's a classic and an amazing game. Hansa Teutonica.
I will agree with you. It's aged well, given that they brought out a big box and people got really hyped to buy it. Certainly, if it had come out and nobody cared, then it wouldn't have aged well. But there was a lot of buzz for that box. Yeah. I still hate this game.
Oh, really?
I hate this with a passion. I think my rating of 3 is too high. So I really did not like this. I played this about 6 years ago. When I first started it got shown to me as like one of the first games, and all I remember was just getting kicked in the teeth every turn and being unable to kick anyone else in the teeth. It just it's a bit like the problems I have with Lorenzo and the other ones I mentioned before in the Dragon. It's like this one just is too punishing. It's like I don't feel like I'm achieving anything, and on top of that, I know it's got no theme in it whatsoever, but it's like, if you're going to give me no theme, at least make it something interesting to look at. I mean, different strokes for different folks. I agree it's aged well. I just hate the game.
Yeah, I can understand why it's not for everybody, as you say, but I think rating it a 3, isn't that generally thinking that games are kind of broken and don't work? I think it's hard to argue that this game...
Well, that's more a 1, but that's only if you use BGG scale. Again, I don't use BGG scale for anything. It's like it's a personal thing as to what the rated is, and it's more of a feeling. It's like, how do I feel playing this game? Is it one that I want to play over and over again? Do I bring it out every now and again? Will I seek it out? Do I find myself being bored? Do I dislike it? Does it actually make me angry playing it? Or as you say, is it phenomenally broken? Like I hate Concordia and Great Western Trail more than this game, but they make me more angry than this game does. This one I sort of go, right, it's cubes, it's ancient and it's confrontational, whatever. It's like I can sort of pass it by as opposed to the other ones which are more modern, and I think, oh come on, they can do better than this. But it's definitely, I mean, this is quite amusing. That it's like I agree like your games are aging well, but I just wish I would actually be able to sing the praises of some of them, because so far I feel like I'm just beating you down, much like your games do to me. So it's
No, that's fair enough. But I'm surprised. To be honest, I was expecting this to be a lot more confrontational than what it was. So I didn't get that impression from it, because and people always say this is one of the real nasty Euros, one of the ones that you have to watch out for. But I didn't really see it that way. When you think about what you're doing and why you're blocking people, it's not to hurt them; it's to help you. Simple as that. But I
but it
suppose
does
which way
that inadvertently, yeah.
yeah. But hey, yeah, fair enough.
It's what I like that. Yeah, the root of Luke's hate for beige Euros. That's probably not too far from the truth, because I'm trying to think. The beige Euros I would have played when I first started properly gaming would have been Power Grid and this one. I can't think of any others beige Euro wise that are that old that I had problems with. I think these two were the first. And maybe I think that kind of cemented like, right, hang on, this isn't the type of game I'm going after. It's like, ooh, these thematic ones are sweet, because I mean obviously you don't care about theme going by off your list, whereas theme is more a thing for me. So these beige Euros can occasionally win me over, just not that often. But it's like I say, at that point, once you've lost me in terms of the theme and that, you have to win me over by other stuff. And again, this one, as you say, you're not directly kind of being confrontational, but I forget how the rules work in this. But when you've got cubes on the route and you realize you're going to get blocked out, you kind of have to get in there, otherwise them blocking you out will effectively be the same as confrontational, even though it's not me directly saying, right, I'm screwing you over to because I want to screw you over. It's like, no, I'm going here. It screws you over by default, but it's going to happen. It's
See, it's completely different vibe for me, because I absolutely cannot stand when people are just playing a card that will hurt me for no reason whatsoever. That rubs me the wrong way. I hate it. I hate take that games in general. But I didn't get that impression from this one.
Agreed.
Yeah, I didn't get that vibe from this one at all. If I'm in the other person's shoes, I can see and completely understand why they're doing what they're doing. So I suppose that's why it had a different feel for me.
Is it? Because this one, yeah, it's definitely not a take that game. Because I agree with you. I don't like straight up take that games. With this one, I suppose it also comes down to that. There's one phrase I use called pseudo knockout, which is like the phrase of, well, a lot of people use it, but it's essentially like you haven't been knocked out of the game, but you might as well be. Like you feel like you're on the back foot so much that you are just going through the motions to get the game finished. This had that similar vibe when I played it. It's like you got started, you had a bad start, you're on the back foot, you never sort of felt like you could then flip it on its head. Like whoever started off well was going to continue to do well. I don't know if you agree with that with this game.
But I suppose you could always look back to thinking, that was your mistake. You should have done better, I suppose. But
true, but then they say that about Food Chain Magnate. It's like, oh, you should have done better. What, on the first turn of like 50 in a 4-hour game? No, you design your game better, is what I say.
I agree with you. I actually agree with you there. I felt the exact same way about Food Chain Magnate. Far too advantageous to people who've played the game already.
Yeah. Okay, 5. There's definitely a lighter front on mine as well. But 5, yes. I do have the new version of this game, I admit. It certainly looks better, but the old version, I had to look at it to see, would I play the old version? 2006, I think the new one was a couple of years back, maybe 3 or 4 years back. But I'd happily still play as a, family weight route connection game on the Underground, even in its old version. So this is not the new one that Ludi Creations done. I'm trying to illustrate with the 2006 version, but simple route connection game. Map still has the white start background with the London part. Simple concept of build the train networks across the thing, but the idea of moving this passenger from place to place where you kind of know where they're going to go. You can puzzle out, right, he's going to go over there at some point, then he's got to come back over here. So if I build my route over here and catch him on the return, I can start getting some points while also connecting up like the special markers like these green ones here or the blue and red spaces, and micromanaging your track. It's all got like the Euro signs to it, but it's such a simple game. I teach it in 5 minutes because it literally has ticket to ride levels of rules in it. It's just a case of once everybody understands how the passenger moves, you're good. Like there's pretty much the whole game. The rest of it is just action points, which doesn't seem to get used as often. Actually, I must admit, in modern
Yeah.
games, the action point system seems to have it's like gone away. But
Yeah, true.
I I was surprised that the new version of On the Underground didn't get as much buzz, although I blame that more on Ludi Creations than the actual game. Because Ludi Creations doesn't tend to big up their games quite as much. Like, you don't hear the buzz, like, oh, we're bringing out this fantastic new game or something. They tend to sort of go, here it is, play it if you want. It's like, no, come on. It's like, get some marketing for your game.
Yeah, cool. I mean, I've not played this one, so I can't say either way. I don't know what it is. I think it just doesn't really appeal to me. It never really, grabbed me. But general consensus is that it's a really solid game. So another one of those games I'll be happy to try it and happy to play it, but not something I'm going to go and grab off the shelf myself and buy it myself. But hey, cool. I don't know anything about it, so I can't really add much.
Which is fair enough. Some people actually prefer the older version than the new one, which is fair enough. I prefer the look of the new version, but like I said, the old version doesn't look bad for something that was 2006. Hence, that was because I was thinking, like, if I don't like the look of the old version, I probably wouldn't put it on this list. But once I looked over these pictures and that, it's like, nah, you hand me this game, I would gladly play it. And some family games do well. We've even had one at Essen, Lisbon 29 Tram or something. I can't remember what it was called, but again, that was a root connection family weight game, and I saw it get a lot of demos at Essen. So it's not obviously going to be like the granddaddy that is Ticket to Ride, but having that level of rules, again, having something that's family weight in a plethora of 3-hour heavy Euros, still does the job for something that's 15 years old. I wonder if this is my oldest game on the list. 50. Nope. There's one that's a lot older than that. All right, cool. We'll go with that. Actually, a few years older, yeah. So we haven't got to my oldest game, I don't think, yet. Okay. Fair enough. Not much in the chat on it either, so we'll move on then. Fours.
Okay, so my number 4 is somewhat of a crossover, believe it or not, semi-crossover. This is Puerto Rico. So Puerto Rico,
cool.
going back to 2002, so nearly 20 years old now. And this is one of the highest regarded Euro games of all time. I think it was number 1 on BGG for many, many years. Make of that what you will. But for me, this one still holds up fantastically because despite all the other games using a similar action selection system where you have a bunch of basically actions to take, you get that action, you get a slightly ramped up version of it, and everybody else gets to do the same thing, but not quite as good as the one you got. And I love that as a main mechanism. I think it's great. And this one, you're basically you're basically building a colony, getting the different plantations, converting them into goods, and then shipping them off to get victory points. But I just love how smooth this game is. I love the player interaction on the fact that when it is the right time to pick this role. Is it going to help me, or is it going to help the next person next to me just as much as it's going to help me? Or should I wait for someone else to choose it because I'm going to benefit just as much and they probably will choose that anyway? I think that's such an interesting decision space and such a nuanced way of embedding player interaction in a way that's not going to it's not going to be in your face. Again, it's just subtle enough to be interesting, but not too polarizing. I think it's still one of the best games ever. I think objectively, it's probably one of the best designs of all time. It's not in my top 10 or anything like that. Maybe just in the top 20, top 30. But I think if I'm thinking purely on the game design, this might be one of the best games ever made. And I think the reputation over the years kind of lays truth to that because it's still considered one of the best. And if you haven't played it, this is an absolute treat. It's just such a good game. And if you like your Euros, this is right up there. Love it, love it, love it.
Is that? No, I would have been surprised if this hadn't hit your list when I was talking about San Juan earlier. And yeah. I like Puerto Rico. Fine. What was it? What did I give it? 7? Yeah. I like the mechanic of choosing what role it is, and the whole building plantation thing. Also, like is dry as a go get out, and I'm not really caring much. But using the production buildings and choosing the roles is what makes the game for me, which is why I now prefer San Juan, because rather than San Juan does away with all this bit, with the exception of building like tobacco and indigo bits, but it keeps the role aspect.
Yeah.
Do I wish San Juan maybe had a couple extra roles? Because I think this one has quite a few, but no big deal. It's one that I want the feeling of Puerto Rico, but I want it done in 30 minutes. Cool. I've got San Juan. That has that works for me. But yeah, no, this I don't see it played a lot these days though. So has it aged well? I don't know. It's definitely popular, although I feel that's with a specific crowd because Jarrett mentioned this, and it's the exact same thing that puts me off ever wanting to play it again, despite liking it. It's got the same problem as those who have overplayed Food Chain Magnate. You can play this with casual players and have a half decent time. If you play this with
Yeah.
what are termed Puerto Rico sharks, oh my word, it's not a good experience. they they want to auction off turn
I get
order.
that.
It's that bad.
Yeah, I get that. I suppose I've only ever played this with people kind of at the same level as me, so that adds
Which is
way
good or
more
bad?
credence to the game.
Is that like
which
is that top level or bad level?
bad level, absolutely bad level. But I think, surprisingly, I think a lot of people put too much emphasis on the fact that people who aren't new to it aren't going to understand the way that roll turn order works. It's not that hard to understand. It's very logical. If the person to your left is going to kind of benefit second most, and people think that if you've got an inexperienced player, they're just going to keep on just basically feeding the best player because they're going to be manipulated and keep taking the wrong role, and they're going to benefit too much that way. But I think that's patronizing. No, anybody who plays any kind of game like this, even this is not a heavy game. It's what, 3.5 out of 5 maybe. They're not gonna. They're going to understand that. After a few turns, they're going to understand what's going to help them, what's going to help other people. And I say, don't patronize them. They will understand. They will get it. That's my opinion anyway. But maybe other people have been sharked by it, but I personally haven't.
It's not so much that the other person wouldn't get it, but because the Puerto Rico Sharks have their way of playing it, like it is definitely their meta. Games like the Resistance built up a meta over time, where now everybody believes you have to play Resistance in a certain way the first couple of turns, otherwise you break the game, and that's always problematic when it gets to that point. Puerto Rico got to that stage with the die-hard fans of this. Not that I know who they are anymore because I haven't seen anybody play this in donkey's ages, but they still exist. That's why I'm paranoid to ever want to play it again, because I feel like the only time I'll see it on the table is when one of those sharks is wanting to play it, because I don't think anybody has this as casual. It's like, oh, you want to play Puerto Rico? Hang on a minute, how many times have you played this? So I've played it a few times in my life. Am I going to screw the game up for you because I decide I want to take this role? It's like, always a little worrying, but yeah, curious about the aged one. I'll be interested what the chat might say on that one. I'm a little bit confused by a question that's been asked though. Is like having the trouble trusting anybody who wears House Lannister shirts. Who are you referring to?
That's me.
Is that you? Is it? Right.
Yeah,
I was gonna say, is that what you on about?
Yeah.
Right. So I thought it's like no. So I'm not aware that this was Lannister, and nor with what you're wearing. So I was a little bit like, huh? That threw me off there for a bit. I'm curious what the distinction is, but I guess I just have to. I'm not usually paying too much attention to people's clothes when I'm watching videos, so it's like, oh, and I might be listening to them as like podcast or whatever. So the last thing I'll notice is what shirt they're wearing. Okay, odd. All right, but all right, 4. We got to this one. This one, I believe, 2010 for this one. Yep, 2010. It is still played today. Granted, I prefer it with expansions, but I still end up playing the base set of this continuously because some friends of mine want to play it and it's on Board Game Arena only in base frame format, which is annoying because I really want them to put the expansions in. But to this day, Seven Wonders still holds up. After 11 years, it's still the king of a lot of these drafting games. A lot of these other ones have tried to come out and supplant it. I know It's a Wonderful World tried that, and personally, I just found that one meh, nothing amazing, nothing bad. I would still, every time some drafting game comes out, that's like, oh, it's drafting a bunch of these cards. What was another one? Was it Minara? No, it wasn't Minara. There was Hadara. That was it. Yeah, the one where you were just getting color cards. Works fine. All of these are as jars of bone, but every time I've played one of them, I go, it's fine, but Seven Wonders is better. And after 11 years, this is probably the newest game on my list because I'm not aware I've got anything from 2011. I tried to avoid that year whenever possible. So this is probably the newest one I've got. But I prefer it with lower player counts, like 3 or 4 players, because I like in drafting where you gamble on whether the card comes back around the table to you. In a 6 or 7 player game of any drafting game, you lose that because as soon as you see your hand, you have to go, I'll pick this one, and then this is gone forever. You'll never see it again. But yeah, I want to. You know, I still love playing it this day. No drafting game, like basic drafting game like this, has replaced this for me.
Yeah, that's a fair point. Actually, you said that this is the most recent game on your list. Yeah, that might be the case, but in terms of people trying to dethrone it, it might be maybe one that's weathered the most, because it really has got kind of a almost not a monopoly, but when you think of card drafting, you go straight to Seven Wonders, and it hasn't really slipped. So it's done well to stay at top of that, top of the parapet. And when you think of card drafting, this is the game you think of. Not one of my favorite games. I actually thought it was okay, but I completely agree with you. It has aged completely, well, wonderfully, to be honest. Despite me absolutely adoring Seven Wonders Duel. But yeah, good choice, and I can't argue with what you're saying.
There's a lot of, I mean, some people go and prefer It's a Wonderful World. I never got into it as much. I never felt constrained by the cards. It's like you got 10 cards, you decide whether to play it or use the resources from cards that you get, or trash a card to get a resource. So I never found that I had trouble getting the resources I needed. So it was just a case of I'll just play these generic cards and they all feel the same. Like the blues and the greens and the yellows don't feel any different to each other. Whereas in Seven Wonders, the browns, the reds, the blues and greens are fundamentally different. If I'm going for certain things, if I've got a lot of yellow cards, I'm good with resources, but I need the points. Blue, I get a ton of points, but they're expensive to build. And science, all the symbology. So each one just had that cool mix. The other thing is that in Seven Wonders, I can effectively hate draft in this, knowing that the neighbor to me wants this particular card. It's a Wonderful World, you can't hate draft at all. There's just far too many ways to get around missing a resource that there's no point me looking at my neighbor, because I look at their thing and go, well, they could get a resource from this or this or this, so whatever, and I just kind of ignore. I'll admit Seven Wonders Duel is better than this, but that's basically like comparing caramel ice cream to mint ice cream. I love both. It's
Yeah.
it's so, I use that analogy so much. It's like I love both games. I wouldn't play Seven Wonders with two though. So Duel has its purpose. And we mentioned like some of these ones. You mentioned like people trying to dethrone this like crazy. Splendor is too recent to be on the list, but the amount of people that have tried to dethrone Splendor and claim they've done it, granted, we could, you'd have a whole other video as to whether that's true or not, but I still have Splendor on my shelf. None of the ones that have come out to try and supplant it have supplanted it for me personally. This is another one of those occasions. People keep bringing out stuff, like Paper Tales is another one. Paper Tales, boring, is over in 20 minutes before you even realize what you're doing, and looks horrible. Like the artwork on it is so abysmal. I just never really got into Paper Tales. So yeah, all these games keep coming out saying we're the next family weight drafting game. It's like, no, you're not. Seven Wonders is still king. Whether or not people like it or not.
Yeah, fair enough. It's been a consistent hit since it's come out, so definition of aged well, I suppose.
I say, I have not tried Architects though. That only got released this week in the UK, and the person I normally get review copies from at Asmodee is somewhat on holiday at the moment, so God knows when I'll get hold of it, but it's on my list. I want to try Architects. I'm a little concerned that it might just simply be some mess spin-off, but it's Seven Wonders in the title. I'm going to try it, so there's no surprise there. Alrighty, top threes.
Okay, so my number 3 goes all the way back to 1997. This is the second game, well, the second entry by Reiner Knizia. This is Tigris and Euphrates. So Tigris and Euphrates, I think I had to put on this list because I can't think of any other game that does what Tigris and Euphrates does. It is so unique in everything, apart from obviously its sister game, Yellow and Yangtze.
I was going to say, yeah.
Yeah, but that's the same designer. It's a kind of a companion game. This is a weird game. I think one of the most unique games out there that just, despite being relatively easy in what it does, it's one of the hardest and weirdest games to explain to somebody who hasn't played it before. I found that anyway. So this is a game where you are trying to collect 4 different, basically, categories of points. But I think it was the first game that ever used that Knizia scoring, where out of the 4 categories, only your lowest one scores. I love that idea. That's one of my favorite scoring mechanisms. I know a lot of people have stolen it now, but this one still does it the best, I think.
Who's stolen it?
I think it's many games that have used that system now. Yeah. I think there's even a game that came out this year called Allegory that took it as well. But hey, anyway, Tokens and Euphrates tile placement game. You're basically trying to build out these little kingdoms, I suppose. You can share these kingdoms with other players, but as soon as you connect these kingdoms, then basically a battle ensues, and you play tiles from behind your screen and can try and control these things and get more cubes of a certain type. But I love that, again, that spinning the plates mechanism where you want to be diving into all the different bowls and making sure that you're keeping all your levels topped up and not just tunnel vision down one pathway, because if you do, again, only your lowest one scores. So you can have as many other ones as you want, but if your lowest one only has one cube, then your score is one. And picking your battles is great in this one. It's another one that's, I suppose you could call it confrontational, but I love how dynamic the board is. So 1 minute it looks in one way, you'll have a big smash up, and then everything's divided up into all these different kingdoms again, and you start again afresh with a whole new layout and new opportunities arise. I love the ticking points of the pagodas or the temples that you can get. So when you line up a cube of these tiles of the same color, they flip over, and you put a temple on them, and then if you claim that temple, then every round you start generating points just spinning. So it's a great one to have if you're falling behind on a certain category, then it builds up your points. I just think everything this game does is so well done. I can't really think of any way you could improve it, but I think this is just the perfect example of a game that's held up just since it's come out, still feels fresh, still feels different, and love it. Brilliant game. That's Tigris and Euphrates by Rainer Knizia.
I considered this one because I used to own this one in its new format. I ditched it in favor of Yellow and Yanks because as much as they're both 90% the same game, I think Yellow tweaks one or two things that I prefer in it, which is mainly that the different colors have a bit more use, like a bit more differentiation. There's one thing about this game though that kept it off the age list thing, because I did consider it. I thought, oh, this could be a potential, but one thing put me off. The one complaint that this game does get, which is one of my negatives of it, is the drawing from the bag. Because a lot of games these days, any mention of the word luck gets shunned on by hardcore Euro players. And this is not a casual game. This is one you're playing as a heavy Euro gamer. For not only the lack of theme, but also just the fact that it's a very abstract point game where, as much as I love that scoring mechanic as well, I think Knizia was the main one who did it, it's definitely a Euro-y thing. But most people are a little bit iffy about drawing tiles from the bag, because with this one, you could just get screwed over by not drawing the right tiles that you need. You know, I'm about to get screwed over in this war. I need red tiles. Oh, they're all blue. You know, and that can throw a little... that's the thing that I worried might... like some people would have issue with these days.
Okay, I think that's a fair point. I'd never really considered that. I suppose because one of the main actions is that you can discard as many card tiles as you want and draw as many back. I suppose it's never really affected me to a point where it's influenced the
It's
outcome of the game. Maybe that's why.
Yeah, the thing with that action is that I don't see people do it often, though. That's the thing. Is like, you know, you've only got so much time in the game. If you're spending actions doing a discard and redraw, that's kind of like, oh, nothing else was any good. You almost feel like I need to do something with a tile at the moment. The Yellow and Yanks has a similar problem. You are still technically drawing from a bag. The only slight extra bit of mitigation is that the green tiles, the green color, has that little secondary market at the bottom. So if you're able to use the green leader, you can pick a tile off a tableau, which mitigates that to an extent, but I wish that was like the whole way. And I feel that's like the one thing I would want to tweak in this game for a modern age, is to remove the bag, or have the bag, but have a tableau that you take the tiles from. You know, it could be a row of 10 tiles, 5 tiles, whatever, and every time you use up tiles, you can take... maybe you've got to take some from the bag. Maybe you got to do a bit of both or something, but being able to have a little bit of extra mitigation, I think, brings it more into the modern age. As much as I love it, I still... what do I do? 8 out of 10? Yeah, I still really enjoyed this one.
Yeah, I think that's a really fair criticism. Yeah, I mean, I think I preferred this one over Yellow and Yangtze, despite those other things, simply because of the war system. Was when you went to war, the actual individual tile colors would influence the battle rather than just the red ones in Yellow and Yangtze. I think that's right.
Yeah,
so I thought that was a bit more intuitive, personally.
Yeah, but I mean, when I was trying to think about which one of these two am I going to keep, it literally was a difficult choice. I did
Oh
not
yeah,
know which one. It's like that's got a pro and con. That's got a pro and con.
yeah,
I'm going with the slight reduced luck mitigation and the look of the game on this one more than this one. But it was a tough choice. And
absolutely,
what
yeah.
you say is correct. The fact it's easier in a sense to sort of go right. All battles are done with red, but then it's also slightly more intuitive to think, oh right, the color is important. So
Mm.
there was a ton of ways on that. All right, freeze on mine. Right, I think this is the oldest one. A quick check because there's only one on my list that could be older. No, that's not that. This one has to be the oldest, surely. It is the oldest, yes, because I don't have any game from the 1990s on mine, but this is 2000. So I tried to think of some games in the 1990s. I even considered Magic the Gathering until I realized that I would not play Magic the Gathering in its like first edition form. You know, I played it to death at university, but in evolved forms. And nowadays you've got planeswalkers and all this stuff. And it's like, yeah, that didn't exist back in 1995. This one, though, played it at university before I got into game like board gaming a lot. And it was just, oh, not heard of this game, but I'll go with it. It's now top 100 material. I still love it to bits, whether I'm playing the old iffy-ish artwork version or the new one. Citadels is still a massive hit for me. It's still being sold. It's still going well. And I mean, I'll load up the original version just to showcase it rather than the new master set, which I have. It role selection games aren't as common, but I think role selection is one of my favorite like style mechanics, being able to choose a different character each round and use them for their abilities. The rules are dirt simple. In fact, this one's not showing a lot of pictures of the game, so maybe I will go back to the the other version. But it's just simple. Choose a role, build buildings, spend the money, points are your buildings worth, and now you've got a lot of different roles to use, but I find myself playing this game with the original 8 a lot of the time, maybe with just one slight tweak for the warlord into a diplomat, because if I'm teaching the game, I'll give them the easier roles. I still get a blast with this one, and it surprised me when I read, oh no, the original concept was 2000, because I was playing this game at university along with a bunch of horrible Steve Jackson games that were kind of like the rage with some friends I had then. This one was just kind of like, oh, it's something different from Steve Jackson, but I think this one and Colossal Arena I remember playing from Fantasy Flight around that point, and Colossal Arena definitely hasn't aged well. I mean, you've only got to look at Equinox at the moment. It's like it's the exact same game, but this one never changed. They just made it look insanely gorgeous. I'm not going to deny the new version looks better than the old one, but whatever. I had the old one on my shelf for years, even before I got back into gaming, and still love it to this day.
Yeah, this is actually one of those games, we mentioned earlier, could a game be on this list if we didn't personally like them that much? This actually made my shortlist because despite it not being one of my favorite games, I still think that this is probably the best in the genre of again, the hidden role selection thing. It does what it does very well. They all synergize with each other wonderfully. And I think it's a really solid design, again, despite not being to my personal taste. I did have my kind of moment in the sun with this one. I played it quite a few times and enjoyed those times. But I think over time, I started to have one too many games that overstayed their welcome because it did drag on a little bit too long, I think, for what the game offers.
It can do, and people are asking about player count. I actually like this at 2 players. I have played it at 2 players and it works quite well, but the sweet spot is definitely 4, and 5's not too bad. I would not play it with more than 5, and certainly I agree if you play it with sometimes with 5 if you've got slow players, because I mean it's like, oh, are you subject to AP? Right, you ain't playing this game, mate, because you'll spend ages trying to choose a role. But 4 is a beautiful number for this one, or 5 quick players. The fact that you can play it with 6, 7, or 8 is just stupid. It's like ridiculous. Totally not worth playing at such a high count. And I'd like to hope that you were the only one who doesn't get this game, but there are a few people that don't as well. But yeah, I still love it. Yes, you can get hurt by the assassin, but then the fun of trying to think, right, who are you likely to kill? Who are you going after? Who's going to pick it? And if you do pick it, are you going to kill the king because you want to be because you want to be that player, or you hate them going first? Or it's like, can I get away with being the merchant this round? It's such a cool one. And I'd still enjoy it at 2, 3, 2, 3, 4, 5. is the player count I would use. And yeah, I can't think of many role selection yet. I mean, Mission Red Planet is this 2.0, but it's more involved. There's more rules in that one. It's still lightish, light mid, but this one is just the classic simple. I've used it at my game club a lot with new players. It's like, oh, you've not tried it, you're relatively new to games, cool, because these abilities are not complicated and everybody understands the concept of get money, build. So, yeah, it works quite nicely for me.
Yeah, it's a good one. I forgot what I was going to say about it, but yeah, it's a solid choice.
I mean, you mentioned could we have games that we didn't like? Well, I mean, I don't see why not, because I probably wouldn't play Puerto Rico now, but I say it fits. The Hansa Teutonica one I can't stand, but the fact that the big box came out and there was a lot of buzz for it tells me it's aged well. That's different. So, like I say, aged well is not necessarily whether you enjoy the game or not. I mean, granted, that probably is going to be some influence because obviously those are the ones you want to sing the praises about. But yeah, there are some games I can think of that do well. I don't like them, but they've aged well enough. I mean, I suppose when did actually no, that came out 2013. I was trying to think of Concordia. Can't stand it, but that one
Amazing.
I don't think's 10 years. I don't think that one's 10 years old yet, so it wouldn't have fit anyway. But people still play it and go on about it to this day, much to my annoyance. But it still works. Oh yeah, what am I surprised you love that one? Okay, all right, let's get on with two. Spy me, we're on an hour and 40. We're doing well today. Go for it.
Okay, so my number 2, another game from the 90s. So 1999, just on the cusp there. This one, I think, fun factor. This one might be one of the most fun games I have in my collection. Unanimous hit with whoever I played this with, and the pioneer as to the greatest standard of a negotiation game out there. This is Chinatown. Chinatown, oh my goodness, this game is... So this is literally the iconic, or say iconic, one of the best examples of negotiation used correctly in a game. No. Okay, we're talking about games with no bloat, no faff. Just the crux of the game is negotiation, and this game you're basically just claiming these different units, I suppose, on the board. Potentially building shops into those units, and everything else is basically a free-for-all. You can trade shops, or they can't move the shops, but you can trade ownership of the shops, you can trade the plots of land, you can trade money, you can trade the actual tiles with what the shops are going to be. And all of this is just so dynamic. At the same time, you can make these really intricate deals with the other players. I love the kind of speculation on this game. So you might be just sat on this plot of land that it's not worth anything now, but maybe in 2-3 rounds time, somebody has all the land around it and you're sat on that one spot that they need to finish their shop. And all of a sudden you had a bit of land that's worth nothing to a bit of land that's worth an absolute fortune to them. And you have to strike up a deal in order to get that done and benefit off other people's situations. This is just... Again, I talk about games that are streamlined. Nothing gets in the way of this game whatsoever. The way the board develops is so interesting because, as I said, 1 minute something's worth a fortune, all of a sudden someone's got the space next to it and that land is just tanked. So it's one of those things about getting the deals not only at the right cost but at the right time as well. So I love the way that the timing is used in this game. If you haven't tried this game and you do have kind of more outgoing, maybe more boisterous players who like to talk and chat things out and negotiate, then this is as good as it gets. Just the best. There's nothing even anything close in terms of negotiation for me. What a game this is. Still feels fresh as anything. 1999, 22 years old now. This game could be released today and it would still be... this is the highest of the high for me. Just outstanding negotiation game.
I was going to say, there's a lot of negotiation games out there that I play and enjoy, so it's a bold claim to go like the best of the best. I've not played this one at all because it's been out of print for ages, and I think I know maybe one person who owns it, and they've never brought it along. I want to play this because I do like negotiation games. Granted, I don't really much care for the theme here, and obviously it's an older game and that. The thing I'm fearing about it, this has got nothing to do with the fact that it's aged well. I think probably actually it fits the list quite well, actually. But I've heard that this game is very much, if you make a mistake, you're screwed like right royally. Like it's not just simply, oh, I overspent by 20, therefore I deserve to lose. No, it's more like I spent one more than I should have for this, and that has really hurt. Like, you've got to be super accurate with your negotiation in this. Is that a thing?
Um, not not as much as, well, I've not really experienced that. I mean, to be honest, I think the denominations don't go down to that small anyway. I think the lowest one is probably, I think the lowest check is like 5 or something. So when you're, I think it's not the, a lot of these games are hard to work things out because you don't know the value of what things are. But this one, you have a very strict sheet that will say if you have a block of buildings that are 4 of the same shop, then you'll get X amount of money. So you can take an educated guess about what that's going to be potentially worth throughout the game. Is the time now to sit on it, or is it time to sell it to another player? And yeah, you might be able to make some bad deals, but they're going to have to be pretty bad deals for it to influence the game that well or that much. And I've always found that the savviest, the best negotiator will win this game. And I've never really had anybody feel like they're out of it. All the scores are generally in the same ballpark, unless you've made a ridiculous deal. But I love how easy this game is to teach to anybody as well, because I'll play this with a bunch of pure, more involved gamers. But this is one of my girlfriend's favorite games as well. She's not a board gamer, and she absolutely adores this because it's so dynamic and it's just so high energy. It's fantastic.
Is another one on that checklist? I want to try it. I'm worried that it will. Wait a minute, is that a thing? Animal Crossing Chinatown. I mean, granted, I would totally. I've never played the Animal Crossing games, but I would totally play this as a re-theme of Chinatown. That kind of hard negotiation game with little family critters and make it look a bit more pretty than the old version. I would totally be down, but I don't know if this is a thing or somebody's done like a fan-made mode. But it says Chinatown re-theme, so somebody's either been hard at work or perhaps this is only in like Asia. I don't know, but that already like fan-made. That took my interest there. Hard to say. I mean, if it's aged well, like I say, why has it not got reprinted? But then I wouldn't say no to it being reprinted just so I could try it out at some point. Maybe not necessarily. I think it would have to be rethemed from the Chinatown thing, but you could probably staple any theme on this to do with land ownership and it would work.
Yeah,
or
absolutely.
Keep it the same. Keep it on the Asia theme and have the sushi stuff and like properties around. You could make it work. It would look pretty.
Yeah.
Although, Back Itself says it has been reprinted. Has it?
I didn't realise I'm not completely aware of the state of play, what the printing situation is. I got this one maybe last year, and I got it fine. So I don't know.
Because it's just like restock order when I look on UK stuff. I mean, it could be elsewhere. Nothing on Amazon. Pre-order. I don't know if that's a line. No. So it's certainly not around in the UK. Maybe it's in the States. I don't know. But yeah, it's on the list. If I get a chance to play it, I'll play it. That's definitely a thing because I do like negotiation games, and I've got a fair few of them. New Angeles and Sheriff of Nottingham and a couple of others. Yeah. It's like, yeah, but nah, I'd give this one a go. My fear is just that thing of like, oh, is there a way you can get pseudo knocked out? But if it's not the case, then great. That's the one fear I had. Alrighty, 2 for me. Yeah, I mean, there's not much introduction I need to do with this, really. You've heard of this game. Everybody knows it. 2004. 1,000 different expansion maps for it, but it's still the same game. I would still happily play the original. There's no denying that Ticket to Ride has... And people called it earlier, and of course it's going to be on the list. I mean, come on. This game has been around for over like 17 odd years. It's still one of the best selling games in physical existence and still gets played now. I will still show this to people. I'll still play it at the Portsmouth Club. I've got a crate with nearly every expansion map in there. It's still a hit with the family, regardless of which map we're playing. Because yes, I mean, it's just basically DLC content at the end of the day, because you're still playing the same game, just with some added rule tweaks. But the fact that you don't even have to ask the question if it was released today, would it still get the same buzz? Because it's still released. It's never gone out of print. I'm not aware that there was a period where Ticket to Ride wasn't available. And that's got to be something that's aged well. Because you can sort of go, oh, well, it's been reprinted. Yeah, but it wasn't in anybody's existence for a good 5 years before it got reprinted. This one refuses to leave your subconscious. And I considered like the other Gateway games that have come out. So we like people that mentioned like Carcassonne, and you could mention like things like Catan and that. I've got rid of Carcassonne for another game, so that hasn't aged well enough for me. I on Catan, I still enjoy it, but I would never say that Catan has aged well with the mechanics that's in it or something. I still enjoy playing it, but if you were to like, if it had stopped for a while and then got re-released today, if it never came out in 1995, no, I don't think it would have had anywhere near the same buzz. Yeah, this one is just
Great.
still as fresh as when it originally came out. You can. Some people can hate the game, which is totally fine. It's not for everybody, and I certainly wouldn't put it in front of many heavy gamers. I know, but it just works so well. I've used it to such an effect to get new people into gaming because this is kind of like that. Right, you've never seen a game before in your life. Take it a ride on the table, and then they want to try more games. It's always like the perfect entry point.
Yeah, I mean, I can't argue with the numbers on this one. One of the best, most successful games of all time, especially of the modern era. People seem to unanimously like it. Personally, I never really got it. I didn't really get the magic with this one. I don't dislike it at all, but I just don't particularly like it either. My kind of gateway path was the Carcassonne which you mentioned, which I was blown away with. I thought, wow, a game that uses tiles and you build the map, amazing! I've never seen this before. But Ticket to Ride, I suppose, bridges that gap quite well between more familiar childhood games and what's out there today. So I think it does a good job of again bridging that gap between the two. But I can't argue with how many players this game's got into the hobby, and even people who are well into the hobby, like yourself, still enjoy games like Ticket to Ride. So, yeah, the numbers don't lie on a game like this.
You mentioned Carcassonne. I mean, granted, it hadn't been done like building a map with tiles, and that's why I had it. Although John knows the score, I got rid of it for Small Island, the new one, which is still building the map with tiles, but there's a bit more to it while still keeping it simple. That made me like go, yeah, I'm starting to get a bit bored with Carcassonne because even then I never really played the original version of it. I always played a spin-off one, and there was only so many of those. So when Small Island came out, I did a replacement for that. If you've got the Ticket to Ride USA, which one should I get next? Honestly, you can get pretty much any map you feel like, because once you've got a base set of trains, you can play any of the Ticket to Ride maps. You want the meaty version, that's probably my favorite, get UK. You want France, that's really meaty. You want something for 2 or 3 players, get yourself Switzerland or Nordic countries. You want something that's like going to make you break up your marriage, get Africa. There's a lot of different choices out there. I mean, my dad's favorite's India, so India and Switzerland's a good bet. So pretty much any of them can be handy in that one. There was another question I'd mentioned where somebody had mentioned it before. I was trying to think. I mean, there's a mixture of love and hate for Ticket to Ride. Can't seem to find it. But yeah, still does well for me. I knew there was something I was going to say about this. It's now completely blanked out of my head. Well. If I remember, I'll remember it for later. But I think that's the way I've got it. Just works. So with that said, what could I did seriously consider this my number one though. It was a tough choice between them, so let's see what they were.
Okay, so my number one is going back to 1995. This is, I'll just come out and say it, my favorite game ever made. Still go back to that date. El Grande by Wolfgang Kramer.
Somebody asked earlier about that. Yeah, they said that has El Grande been mentioned yet? And I thought, well, spoiler alert, I'm not going to mention it because I've still never played it, actually. It's been on my checklist. But I contemplated with what your taste in games, whether this would be on your list. So it's not surprising that it's on there, but has it aged well? Carry on, though.
Yeah, so probably maybe the most saturated mechanism in all of board gaming, area control, area majority. Thousands and thousands of games have come out since El Grande following that same suit. None of them have done it better, in my opinion. This game is just absolutely marvelous. Everything this does is just so well put together. The way that you take your actions by a face-up row of cards, but you've got to bid for those actions in the first place by using these power cards. But it's not as easy as just smashing down a highest card to beat all the other players, because the lower cards allow you to take these meeples from your common supply into your personal supply. So you need this flow. It's a really like organically developing game where you just need to have a constant flow of meeples to put onto the board to get the best cards. To bear in mind that where the king is, because you can only ever deploy in the regions around the king. That is such a cool decision of where that can go. Simple rule, but the fact that you can never break that rule of going in or out of the kingdom where the king is, and you can use that to your advantage. Is it about to come to a scoring round? Let's play my trump card. Let's get the king in my region and stop anybody from messing with me. Little twist as well, just to ramp up the fun factor. The Castillo is amazing in terms of, are you going to deploy people onto the board, or are you going to put them in the Castillo? And which is kind of like an additional scoring, which the majorities will get X amount of points, but you can further deploy them somewhere else after that to further manipulate the state of the board. And everything this game does is just great. A bit more like Twa earlier, and I normally focus on more strategic games. This one is more tactical because you do have to react to the state of play. You have to react to the cards out there. But this game is just magic in a box. The fun is unreal, and I think this is I think it's the best game ever made. So, hey, why wouldn't it be my number one? 1995. Unbelievable how this game holds up so well. And to be honest, I could have put 5 other Kramer and Keystone games on the list, but I just thought let's just stick with the granddaddy and El Grande, the best area majority game of all time.
I just wish I could comment more on it because I've still not played this. No one owns it, and the big box was a complete rip-off, so I didn't want to go anywhere near it. I mean, isn't the cube tower kind of a luck-driven thing though? I question if that would work today, because isn't the idea that you put stuff in the cube tower and it drops out and that depends on stuff, or am I getting it wrong?
No, it's literally just like another spot on the board, except you can't see what's in there. So you have to kind of remember what other people have put in there previously, but there's no luck in it at all.
Ah, fair enough. So I suppose it could. I mean, it certainly could use a. Well, I don't know. The color meeples are nice. It could probably just use a nicer looking board and maybe a sweet update for the cards. But it probably could work. It's on my checklist, quite high on the checklist. It's definitely one I want to try. I know it's like completely themeless, but that card mechanic sounds good. When I've heard it sort of explained. So it's definitely high up there. I just wish I knew a bit more about how it works, but because it's not been, apart from that big box, it's not had much of a resurgence. And I mean, to be fair, I can't really say that there wasn't a lot of buzz when it came out, just because the big box I hear was a bit of a rip-off in terms of its price, and it wasn't released for that long. I would just like to see, look, could you just give me a basic core box of this, not massively huge, not stupidly overpriced, I don't need 10 modules, unless you've got more cards to use, just give me just give me a core set so that I can actually experience the game. Because sadly, it's just never been there.
Absolutely. If they made this a £35 game, it would still be at the top of a lot of people's lists. And ironically, the big box version, despite this being my favorite game of all time, I've never even touched one of the expansions. So the base game is that good. You do not need anything else. It is perfect the way it is.
That does make sense, because a lot of these games are like Queen is like, Humber's got the big box with like 1 million expansions in it. I've tried 2 of them out, ones where you don't get change and a couple others, and it's like they're good, but frankly, I would still happily play Alhambra as a base set. It just they do overload it with this stuff, and it's like, carrying out loud, I don't need 100 different ways to tailor the game because you're going to be playing with 100 different people. Therefore, I want a core set that works.
Yeah. Yeah, and to be honest, the more I kind of, over the years, expansions are really becoming more and more of an afterthought. You just need the core experience to be where the money is, and El Grande is the perfect example of that. It just doesn't need any tweaking at all. Just incredible.
Is this the one that most people play it at 5?
Yeah, ideally you want to be playing it at 4 or 5. Yeah, that is where it really does shine.
More on those. Somebody bring it to a convention one day. I'm going to GridCon, all right, this November, all right? So somebody go to GridCon, bring El Grande. I want to try it, all right? So it's so high on that list. Even though it's like, I could play this and absolutely hate it. I have no idea. This is one of those games where I just got no idea if I'm going to like it or not. I think the card mechanic is going to be the make or break. Because, I mean, area control is area control. It's dudes on the map. I mean, that's nothing new. But if the card mechanic is that fun and the turns are that sort of agonizing and I don't feel like I'm out of the game early, then it's like, this could be a particularly good hit. So we'll find out. All right. But Now, has ever? Well, yeah, people have heard of Man Number One. Now, I did wonder if I was putting this too high, but it's on my shelf. 2006, as I say, I don't think I chose anything from pre 2000, mainly because I'd either not played it or hadn't liked it. But this one though, it must have been one of the first few that had worker placement. There's not many worker placement games pre this one. It was done by Cosmos. It has had a reprint, not like re-implementation, but a reprint. It's dirt simple, but I sort of thought, right, lightweight worker placement game with a medieval theme. Okay, that works today. It's simple, so anybody can do it. So okay, it would have the wide appeal. It has a mechanic that has not been replicated anywhere else, which I still think is somewhat criminal. And you want to talk about some games these days looking absolutely naff, like really horrible bad artwork and that. You take one look at this game and tell me that it looks bad. This is one of the most gorgeous boards I've seen in my lifetime. Menzel is just a genius when it comes to boards. Not necessarily board game design, although he has done one or two, but certainly anytime he paints a board like Terramara and that, I want to see the board, if nothing else, even if I didn't like the game. But this one still works. I still have it. I'd still play it. It's got the dry medieval theme that is pretty much common this day of here's my get my resources, churn it into VP. But the worker placement in this is still one of the most sort of popular mechanics. I love the fact that you're building a cathedral sort of literally out of pieces. I know it's like not necessary, but it still looks cool. But the mechanic where you draw the master builder out of the bag and then decide whether it's got to be paid lots to get it out early and that, it's not been replicated, but I still really love it. I love that mechanic and I want to see it used more. Maybe not in like a 3-hour game, but it needs to be used more often. And this is definitely going to be a more contentious one because, I mean, some people have like called it earlier. I think one or two people called it earlier, but some people are not the biggest fan of it. Although back of the shelf, if you think that if you think this board looks bad, you need to get your eyes checked. So there's no way this is. But we've just come on. Have you seen most of Dan's list? And you're telling me this one looks bad in terms of aesthetics? Come on. The idea of the Year of the Dragon. Don't talk to me about bad artwork. But you say some people would not have seen it coming, or they may not like pillars, but I still really enjoy it.
Okay, I half agree and half disagree with you on this one. So that bag drawing mechanism I think is great. I would love to see that used in another game. That is actually probably one of the top mechanisms that I'd put in that category of that I think it's wonderful. Draw one out your bag. Do you want to use it now and pay the big bucks, or are you going to just wait and let other people jump in before you and potentially get it for cheaper? Wonderful idea, wonderful mechanism. The rest of it, however, I feel is a little bit clunky, and I feel it's a little bit game of small gains. So I don't like the way that you gain the cards and trade those cards in for a point or two each turn. I feel it's a little bit stagnant, a little bit static.
Isn't that what like most Euro games are these days? Churn X into Y. I mean, everyone goes on about Furnace at the moment, which I found a bit meh. But that is basically here's the card, turn X resource into Y victory points.
Yeah, I suppose, but I just feel like it could have been ironed out a bit nicer. I thought the way that you claimed the cards at the beginning, in the way that related to the rest of the kind of resolution of the game, it felt a little bit of a disconnect. Personally, I don't know. Maybe it's because I'm used to playing the more standard, I suppose, Lords of Waterdeep system where you put things down, get something back, put something down, get something back. But again, if we're talking about that bag mechanism, couldn't agree more. I think it's brilliant, and the board is absolutely gorgeous to look at.
I was debating like, this or Ticket to Ride is like technically Ticket to Ride is like more well known and it has that age well, but then I just thought like, releasing it today, like out of the blue or so, would it necessarily do? I would still thought that this one would still get some buzz, with looks like that, it would get the buzz. Because Batoku, for example, on the table, I keep going back to that one, but that was like number one on the hotness list when Paul and I were doing the Essen thing. I can't see anything else in the game yet that would make me go, oh, this deserves to be the hotness, not just like, oh, the mechanisms and that. But a lot of that hype must have been how like beautiful the board looks. Certainly anything like that will get people excited to try it. And I want that bag building. There's got to be another way you can use that mechanism. It has to be. The only thing I change in this game is I put Stonemire resources in place of the cubes. Because pretty much any time I can replace a cube with something else, I will.
Yeah,
I like
absolutely.
Euro games, but I do not subscribe to the cubes are better than anything else thing.
No, I don't disagree with that. But I just think that maybe if this game is released now, considering how saturated worker placement games are, particularly of this weight category, I don't know if this would grab the attention that some others would. I don't know. I kind of feel the same way
Hmm.
about some other classics as well, like Stone Age and Waterdeep. I think they're quite generic nowadays. But hey, I don't know. Maybe that's just me.
There's been ones that, I mean, Settlement recently was one that came out, which was quite a sort of generic engine builder one. Most worker placements that come out these days, though, tend to be the really heavy stuff, though. I don't see a lot of lightweight worker placements anymore. We had stuff like Stone Age and that from years ago, Lords of Waterdeep and a few like that, but I don't tend to see many lightweight ones.
Yeah. I think that's
Yeah.
because they have to do that in order to inject new stuff into it, because everything's been done in the kind of medium light category. That to make it different, they have to add more in. So maybe that's why it's naturally pushing up to heavier and heavier games.
Hmm. Ah, that's right. Well, at least there's actually one game on my list you disagree from the age perspective, because whether you've enjoyed my games or not, you've generally been fine with them aging well. At least there's actually one on this list that you've gone,
Yeah.
hang on a minute, disagree a bit. So it's not entirely one-sided.
No. Yeah, but to be honest, yeah, I think your choices have been genuinely good. Not said not always my personal taste of games, but they have aged well.
But
But this
as I say,
one
it's
is
interesting.
actually
This
one of
was
the impressions. Yeah. This is actually one of the lasting impressions I got from this game was I liked it, again, particularly that bag mechanism, but I don't think it aged well. So ironically, this is one that springs to mind to be the polar opposite. But yeah.
yeah, which is fair enough on that. I like the Jared's comment. If it was Pillars of the West Kingdom, it would sell 100 million copies. That's actually not too
Yeah.
far off the truth. It's like anything of the West Kingdom, or so it's got to be of the something. It's got to be a series. So we started off with Pillars of the Earth. If they kept sequels coming out and said it was like the Pillars of the Earth and then the Caverns of the Earth or something stupid, you've got to make something a series, and then suddenly it becomes like infinitely better. And I've still not played the expansion to this game because it's like impossible to get hold of. It just doesn't work at all. Right. Whew. Well, is there any honourable mentions that you had that you didn't get a chance to do?
Yeah, some more of the kind of lighter ones that came to mind. No Thanks came to mind. Coloretto. I know we touched on Biblios. Biblios would have made the list, but I didn't want too many auction games on there.
Not sure about No Thanks. No Thanks is still fun, but I mean, if I don't bring it out that often because it is kind of a product of its time. Still good, but
Okay. And I said before, Kramer and Kiesling really could be peppered all over. There's Torres, I still really like. Mexica, I still really like. Even like Battle Line, an old Reiner Knizia game, I really like that as well. But yeah, there's quite a lot. And even For Sale would have made the list if I didn't have other auction games on there.
For Sale could have worked. Yeah, I mean, I've gotten burnt off it, but yeah, I mean that could work as a one that's aged well. Battle Line, I mean, I hate the game, but I think I could still work to this day. The Kriesling one's hard to say. I mean, Mexica and those ones, I see them at Essen. I never see them selling that well. I mean, I didn't even see the Takao reprint getting that much buzz, and that one disappointed me because I was like, oh, I've heard a lot about this Takao, right? I want to play it, and this new one looks beautiful. And then I made the mistake of playing it in a free player version, which apparently sucks for Takao. Because with Takao, when you're sort of expanding out and trying to get the pyramids, if you play it in free player, one person goes to the right side, does well. One person goes to the left side, does well. Poor schmuck goes in the middle and is screwed by both players at the same time. It's like, yeah, don't play it with free. But yeah, it didn't necessarily work as well as that. What else did I have? I had Biblios. I did consider it, but I thought, maybe a product at this time. Yinch, I mentioned. Takinoko and Snowtails I had, and I thought, maybe a bit too recent. Snowtails, sadly, I don't see a lot of racing games these days, which is why racing games were a bit worried. I mean, I still love Snowtails, and I still play Downforce a lot, but yeah, they don't hit as well these days. The other one I did have, though, which I think somebody thought I would have, was Cosmic Encounter, because of that one being like 1970s and going back.
Yeah.
But I will say, I have the Fantasy Flight version of it. I can't see myself wanting to play the old versions for how they looked back in the 70s with their artwork and their production quality. But also, as much as I love the game, I still feel that it's a product of its time. The way that like the chaos that happens in it, the clunkiness of some of the card mechanics, like, oh wait, now we're triggering this, when does this happen timing wise, it's not the most streamlined of games. It is hilarious fun to play, but yeah, it does feel like a game of the 1970s. It's just a fun game of the 1970s. I can't see that one making a splash if you released it in this, like, well, technically it is out with the Fantasy Flight, yeah, so ignore that. But yeah, it's people still love it, but again, I don't see it played all the time.
Yeah, I mean, and ultimately, well, as you said, updated, and there's been re-implementations for a reason, because it needs to drag it up to this date. So obviously, I suppose you can only go from the last benchmark when the last release was, which wouldn't have been 10 plus years ago.
It would work on there, but yeah, after that I couldn't really think of many other ones because they were usually too recent was the problem. Like I wanted to consider something like that in the collection. One of the first few games I got was Flashpoint Fire Rescue, but one, I think it's too recent because I think that's 2013 to my knowledge. Maybe it was 2011, I'm not sure. But then I also thought, oh, hang on a minute, is it technically aged well? You're rolling a die for this bit and it's your grid thing. I don't know. It's like it feels more like a product of its time, even though I love it to bits. But it was one of the first ones in my collection, so it's aged well in terms of staying with me. But again, if you released it in its current form these days, yeah, I'd probably think, because it's not a massive seller currently. But no, that's fine. Although definitely two very different lists. I think more people siding with both, but for different reasons. Because yours is definitely the beige zero heavy centric list, whereas mine went more for the sort of gateway, light game list in a sense. Because I mean, most of yours aren't the heaviest thing around, but there's a couple in there which is like a bit more thinky than others. So yeah, that worked on there, and everyone else is agreeing.
Yeah, I mean, if anything, it's been us having massively different tastes in games means that there's a less crossovers and more more examples for people to dip into depending on which side of the spectrum you fall on. So there you go. Good thing, I reckon.
Yeah, because we didn't cross over at all. We had the semi-pseudo crossover with Puerto Rico and San Juan, but even then, you probably haven't played San Juan or wouldn't play that one. You'd play Puerto Rico, and I would play San Juan instead. So it's still, a slight difference there.
Yeah.
What does the chat say? Last Will. I'm not sure I'd go with that one. I mean, I don't hear anybody talk about that one. The original Kalis, no, I don't think that is held up at all. I think that one's outdated. I mean, they've got the new version now, but even that one didn't make a lot of buzz, so I can't see that one being great. Never played Turning Taxis. Could it be good? So I hear mixed opinions on it. I'm not even sure if you can get it these days. Those, I don't think Robo Rally is aged well at all. There's no way that, I mean, that could be it's all right. It's a bit of chaotic fun, but no, if you release that these days, that would never get the buzz. I'm not going to say anything that's got the number 18 on the front is aged one way or another. They feel like a game of the 1830s. Acquire, again, I don't see anyone really play it. I mean, most people want to play Acquire just because they want to try it out, as opposed to, oh yeah, this sounds like an amazing game. And same for things like Age of Steam and that. I mean, they're older games. They have their fan base, but yeah, I can't see them being like modern releases.
Yeah, and Axis and Allies as well. That for me is very dated, but yeah, not my taste.
One of those. What have we got? A couple of these games, yep, some of them did have reprints, but it was a case of whether the reprint was necessary to like the game and that. Like on the Underground, I specifically showed the original 2006 version because as much as I think the new version is better and looks better, I would still happily play the original version. Like, it's not like Cosmic Encounter we just mentioned, I would only really play that new version, whether I was going to think it had aged well or not. I wouldn't touch the old Avalon Hill or other versions that they had, because they had things like paper cardboard standy things for like the alien powers that basically just flopped in sadness on the table. It was like they had some really horrible components in the old days, and I think that would just put me off, because I have limits to how much I'm willing to skimp on production quality these days. Survive Escape from Atlantis,
Not
fun, but it's very take that. I used to play it a lot as a kid in the 80s. I had the new version for a while, but I sold it because it just wasn't getting played. That one's probably more a thing of its time. Yeah, what have we got? Anything else? Notre Dame? well, I don't think it's aged well, but you're the Feld fan, so what do you say?
I suppose I didn't really consider it because I didn't want my list peppered in Feld games, and Notre Dame, to be honest, I think is one of the lower tiered Feld games. It's not one of my favorites at all. I still like it, but I love in the Year of the Dragon, so I wouldn't consider it.
It's one of the ones I slightly preferred, actually. This is kind of weird. The only ignoring Cocopelli because that doesn't feel like Feld. The only true Feld game I remember owning and liking was Amerigo,
Oh
and I
yeah,
think it was the and I know that's themeless, but doing the map thing was good. And I think it was just the cube tower. The cube tower was something
yeah,
different that I'd not tried before, and I liked. It's a bit like Golem that I've recently just rendered the review for. It's got the marble mechanic of, it. The power of the action is how many marbles are in a row. The cube tower from that game was the number of cubes was how powerful the action was, but the color dictated what actions were available. It's just like
yeah.
that had some luck element to it, but there was just something about it that just made it a very
It's
sort
a
of tactical,
Grand
reactive
Austria
game.
hotel
No?
system. Yeah,
Does that have that one? Oh yeah, Grand Austria Hotel does have that. Yeah, I've
yeah,
I've not played that in it. Because it's pretty much a two-player only game for me. I just not touched Austria
yeah,
Hotel since it came out because I just would not play it with more than two. It's like too
yeah.
much
Fair enough.
downtime.
Yeah. But yeah, I agree with you on
Uh,
Amerigo. Amerigo was my second favorite Feld.
hey, good. We do actually agree on a Feld, right? Innovation. Nah, I really love innovation, but it's not something I think that if you released it now, like out of the blue, would get the same amount of buzz, particularly with the way it looks. Uh, that one, no, that one definitely feels like a product this time. Still love it. Through the Ages.
Second
I don't
edition, I
know.
suppose.
That is true, yeah. I wouldn't touch the original. I mean, the
Same.
original ones were very clunky, very fiddly, hard to work with. The only time I even started looking at Through the Ages twice was that fourth edition. And even then, I suppose actually this goes back to what somebody else asked earlier, whether apps had an impact on whether we thought they had aged well or not. I don't
Not for me.
That's what I mean. I didn't really think about the app, but then the thing with Through the Ages is that as much as the fourth edition is now the only one I would play, I only play it on the app. I've I would not sit down and play the physical version of Through the Ages. It takes like it still takes the good 3 to 4 hours to play in physical mode. I can get it done in 60 minutes solo game on my phone when I'm thinking hard about it. I know some people can do it in 20 minutes. I don't care, but it's like it's still why would I not play it on this compared to the physical version? It's when the app is that good. So, but
Yeah, fair enough.
does it mean it's kind of a hard thing? Can it age well if it requires digital implementation? It's kind of a weird, kind of almost a bit of
Yeah.
an oxymoron. It's aged well, but it's digital.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I personally wouldn't count that in. I don't play any digital games, so I wouldn't weigh that into any conversation really.
Interesting that Marrakesh has got the same thing from America. Although to be fair, being Feld, I haven't even looked once even at the like city collection they're doing or something. I mean, if you put them in front of me, I'd play them. And certainly mentioning that Marrakesh has that tower actually would make me want to try the game out just to have
Yeah,
that replicated. But I refuse to go near a city collection that is demanding I play $700 for a collection of 4 games. It's like, get stuffed. I'm sorry. It's like Queen Games
yeah,
really need to sort out their like, I don't know. They need to sort out the idea of money
I know,
with their
I
games
know.
because even without all the deluxe stuff, they're expensive. It's like, I'm sorry, I don't know what Queen Games don't understand about supply and demand, but I don't know. It's
No,
crazy.
they're really
All right,
losing kind of track of reality on those.
it does seem quite mad. They're not worth it retail version. All right, well, I'll bear that in mind. Although to be fair, Paul Grogan kept going on about that Marrakesh on the drive home from Essen. So if I'm going to play Marrakesh with anybody, it's going to be Paul Grogan probably. So I'll wait for him to show me. Ready. Anyways, cheers everybody for joining up. 2 hours 20. I could have ended this 20 minutes ago, but I wanted to get the chat involved. So what the hell? It's a long one and obviously a popular one because numbers have been pretty good with this one and there's a lot of people in. So we're definitely going to have to do some repeat shows. It's on this we can convince you of Felds, maybe. I don't know. Versatile games, are they Felds? I couldn't think of how to do that, but we'll get
Yeah,
some more.
8 Felds.
We'll get some more listed. Maybe one day we'll have to try a trio thing with Franklin. That'd be interesting. Because StreamYard can
Mackenzie,
do
yeah,
multiple. StreamYard can do more people. It doesn't have to be just two. I think it can do up to 4 at least, if not 6. And I've never tried a triple list. Oh no, well, with the exception of Nerd Shelves, but then technically that's their couple, and that I've never actually tried 3 separate screens. So that would be different. I don't know. We'll see whether the chat or whether some Patreons want to see that in the future. But until then, as I say, thanks for joining in with the chat, everyone. Everyone's been great. Of course, don't forget, some people have said, oh, I didn't know who this person was. Well, who are you again?
Yep, so I'm Dan, aka Chairman of the Board. That's the name of my YouTube channel. As you probably learned from this list, I do mainly cover Euros, but I do
not to
have
be confused with this chairman of the band, though.
No, I'm not in a pop group, and I don't wear white suits like that. But
that's it.
But yeah,
if carry on, yeah. Sorry.
No worries at all. No. So yeah, I cover all a range of different games. Mainly, I do Euros, but I love party games. I love all different types of games, and maybe I try to cover things a bit more analytical than a lot of other people do. Focus more on mechanisms and things. I know a lot of people think, well, I personally like to make content that I'd like to see myself. So maybe put it that way.
Yeah, I'd say being analytical is a good thing. There's a lot of too many times I'm seeing just love, praise, no constructive criticism. Sometimes it's like, look, here's a great game. Please love me, publisher. Give me more review copies. That kind of attitude is like, nah, I want to see a bit more analytics in there. And certainly, you're covering a lot of games I've never heard of, I'll admit. But then, we need somebody to cover them. So if I can't do it, then somebody else needs to. And not to mention, I need to check out this top 10 racing board games, actually, because that's caught my eye. It's like one I haven't checked out yet.
I think after your feedback from the list, Luke, you might not like that list.
I gotta try. I'll still gotta watch it. So because I've already tried, because that one was one I watched, the Bastille one, because I grabbed that for like 20. I think I grabbed it for like a tenner from UK Games Expo.
Yeah.
Played it, thought it was okay, had some issues with it, and then sold it for 20. So it's actually made a profit on it, but all for the channel. So yeah, that will be pretty good. But yeah, not to be confused with Chairmen of the Board, which was the 70s group, because as soon as I typed it into Chairman of the Board, if you type it into Google, you will have some trouble because it will keep trying to bring up the 70s group. When I get around to doing the timestamps on this one, there'll be a link in the description to go onto his channel, all right? So you'll be able to get there directly via me, all right? So rely on that. But thanks, everybody. Thanks, everyone, for joining in. There's a lot of people. Love you all. And I'll see you on the next collaboration, whoever that will be. No idea. There's a lot of people to get in touch with. But you've got Top 100 next segment tomorrow, Golem review during the week, Chaos Order preview at some point, and I'm trying to get through these Essen games as quickly as I can because I refuse to do first impressions if I can help it, but that means I need to play these games and give them the beans, so one play isn't enough. It takes a while. So, yeah, we'll catch up with you later, all right?
Take care, everyone. Thank you very much, everybody, and thanks, Luke, for having me on.
No, any day. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.